Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, Sunday night Week 8 review edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and joining me on this lovely Sunday evening, the one, the only MB FantasyLife prodigy himself, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. What's going on, Dwain?
What's up, man? Prodigy. Wow. Okay. I like it. I like it.
Mixing it up.
I'm going to have to deliver tonight. I got to really deliver. When you say prodigy, like, hey, somebody may not have watched this before. Like, and they're going to be like, who's freaking prodigy? Whatever. Okay. All right.
I told Dwain,
set the bar high.
I told Dwain before Sunday Night Football, if the Bills couldn't keep it within 14 at halftime, we were going to start recording. Lo and behold, 24-7 lead. So still got one eye on that. We'll have plenty of, again, utilization stuff by the time we reach that game. Just know that we are recording this at halftime of that. So any spoilers, we do invite the lovely comment section, as always, to let us know as we are riding through. But Dwain, let's get things started with the London game, 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Certainly messing up my sleep time, but the rest of the world likes to get up at reasonable time. So it's all good. Broncos 21, Jaguars 17. Broncos covering as a 1-point dog in the ever rowdy Jacksonville filled London arena, under cashed at 40.5. So this is, Dwain, the second time all season the Broncos have scored more than 16 points. So two claps for that. Russell Wilson, 8.4 yards per attempt. Third time the season has been above 7.1. They were mediocre, but mediocre was still a step above what we have seen from this offense throughout most of the season. So from that perspective, okay, fine. But on the other side of things, I saw a tweet, I believe, from NFL Fantasy before this talking about how Courtland Sutton has scored 11 fantasy points in his last 3 games. It has gotten so tough in this receiving room to expect anything, Dwain. Honestly, unironically, Greg Dulcich arguably has the highest floor in this group at this point, if Jerry Jeudy is going to be out of the picture. Obviously, he was a big member of these trade talks. I don't know what getting rid of Jerry Jeudy does for this team, because honestly, when you look at excluding week 2 was the game where Jeudy only played 10 snaps and then he got hurt. Every other game, Jeudy and Sutton each have exactly 50 targets. Jeudy has 29 catches, 439 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Sutton, 28 catches, 345 yards, and just 1 touchdown. I don't care what we thought about before the season. Jerry Jeudy certainly looks way better than Courtland Sutton, and he has looked that way for several weeks. He's been the superior fantasy option and an offense that we can no longer really expect to produce more than 1 or 2 pass game options. So, Dwain, rest of the season thoughts on Jeudy and Sutton if things stand, because, hey, maybe Judy's traded, maybe he's not. Right now, we are working with what we know.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this one up. It was the first thing I was going to go to on the Broncos. I didn't know where you would go. But yeah, Jerry Jeudy looks like the better receiver than Courtland Sutton. Look, it doesn't mean that Courtland Sutton won't, be any good. Like they're both fine, right? The offense is weighing them down, but Jeudy just gets the better looks. He's playing inside. Like today, 76% of his routes came from the slot. He gets a lot more looks against linebackers, safeties, a lot of zone stuff, whereas Courtland Sutton's having to play outside against the better corners, also playing against, safety over the top a lot. So I think there's a lot of things going into it, but Jeudy is also, he's been earning the targets. Today he came through a little bit more in the box score. Like we've had a few weeks where it's been like, man, Judy's earning targets, and then he's like dropping them. And we know drops aren't really a sticky stat. But with Jeudy, it's kind of one of those things that always stands out to you because we've seen him drop some passes, in the past. So you always have to kind of wonder. But yes, I agree. Jerry Jeudy looks like the better option. And I think, even if the players are equal, like if you get to play in the better situation, right, that helps you. And then, yeah, with Dulcich, like I think at this point, you just got to call him that low end tight end 1. The offense is the only thing keeping him from being someone that we would probably say, okay, should we be considering him in the mid range, tight end 1, conversation, because it's 3 weeks in a row where his route participation has been great. It was actually really good this week, 91% route participation, 21% target share. That was second to only Jerry Jeudy on the team, who had 29%. So yeah, really like Greg Dulcich. If you guys got him on your team, like he's a guy that easily, you can play ahead of, a lot of the other names that we've kind of been, messing around with. They're setting there at the high end, tight end 2 range, like your, your Robert Tunyons, players like that. For me, like Dulcich has passed all those, right? He's not quite into that next tier, that sits above, of those elite guys or the really good tight ends, but he's at least has a shot, right? We know he's this young player. He's breaking out early, but you need the offense to play better.
And look, his 38-yard catch down the half-yard line, which was in fact a sheesh, of course, that was a busted coverage, just like his first touchdown was, a couple of weeks ago. With that said, we have seen enough evidence of him. I believe that 9-catch, 50-yard games he had last week, that was an example of him putting some true nice tape out there for us to see, good route running and all that. And to Dwayne's original point, the fact he has the underlying route metrics, that gives me confidence in being able to look past a blown coverage-induced big play and just say, hey, this is a guy getting fed the ball in this game, at least the second most on his team. He's shown that big play ability. We will be going to the Greg Dulcich as well as a top 10 tight end, as wild as these times are likely moving forward. A couple other sheeshes from the Broncos. So there was a wild throw, man. All right, I watched, not gonna hate on Tua. We're gonna talk about this. It's just a matter of arm strength, man. Tua had a double crow hop into a pass, barely get it 50 yards. Russ from his goal line, man, he slung this shit 65 yards in the air. He had KJ Hamler and Greg Dulcich coming to the ball at the same basic area, and he basically threw it right between them. So coulda, shoulda, would have been a 60-yard completion if he had gotten it to either guy. Unfortunately, just an incompletion. And then also at the end of the game, again, mentioned the disappointing Cortland Sutton line. 1 catch for 13 yards. He dropped a crosser, Dwayne, at the 30-yard line. And it's tough for those to know for sure if he would have scored. But this was man coverage, had a couple steps. It looked like he might have had a chance to keep on keeping on. Unfortunately, it was just a drop. In the backfield, it was Melvin Gordon leading the way in terms of snaps. Latavius Murray actually showed a little bit more juice, though, and had 14 carries to only 9 from Melvin Gordon. These guys aren't catching passes. I still wouldn't be shocked if they try to add someone else to the equation at some point in time. For now, neither guy is taking over, and we just got to continue to put them into that muddled RB3 range. You give it the Jaguars, you got anything special on the backfield, Dwayne?
No, I mean, the big thing with the Jaguars is just ETN, which is kind of what we expected, with James Robinson gone, but we didn't see anyone else work in. So for the second week in a row, we saw him get right at that 80% snap rate, 82% of the rushing attempts, still had, all the 2-minute offense, all the long down and most of the long down distance. Jermichael Hasty had 38% of that, but he had all the short down and distance stuff. Had another long run. I mean, it's Travis Etienne season. So, I mean, if we're looking at ETN, for me, and unless you were asking about the Broncos, but if not, no, there was nothing about the Broncos. It's just a muddled mess. So we're moving to something that's actually more positive, to start. But with ETN, at this point, you're talking mid-range RB1. When you and I talked about him before the season, our thought process was, look, he could be a low-end RB1, mid-range RB1 with James Robinson getting half the carries. Because we thought that the Jaguars would be in a trailing script. We thought he would be the passing down back. Those things they weren't true early in the season. They've turned out to be true here later in the season. But we also talked about there was an upside if for some reason James Robinson wasn't ready to go. If he was slow to recover from the Achilles injury, ended up being none of those things, right? He gets traded, but still the result's the same. We've got this backfield that's pretty much all goes to Travis Etienne now. So he is a mid-range RB1. If he starts scoring more, he's going to have weeks where he's going to have a shot to be the RB1 in any given week, right? We had some really big running back weeks this week with Pollard and Deonta Foreman and Alvin Kamara. I mean, it was like CMC, everyone went off, but Etienne, 25 points is still really good. 24 carries, 156 yards. And he had another long carry. I'm like, come on, man. I want one of these long carries to go to the house. It just hasn't quite worked out for him, but that would have made it, probably a 32, 33 point day.
And he almost had another touchdown there. He got down to the 1-yard line. They gave him a goal line chance, and he got stuffed on that again. So just, again, another really good performance, though, from him from an efficiency standpoint. On the season, we got 46 running backs with at least 50 carries. He's 4th in PFF rushing grade, 6.3 yards per carry, second behind only Tony Pollard, top 15 in yards after contact and missed tackles forced. So as great as ETN has been, Dwayne, the passing, the other Clemson teammate in this backfield, not so much. Trevor Lawrence, 35 quarterbacks, at least 100 dropbacks a season. He's 31st in PFF passing grade, 20th in QB rating, 23rd in yards per attempt, 25th in turnover-worthy play rate. Very tough to find a statistic at this point that paints Trevor Lawrence as anything other than a mediocre to bad QB. Now we can continue blaming every single bad thing that happens to Lawrence on and off the field on Urban Meyer, or we can start looking a little bit more at what we're seeing on the field, Dwayne. And it's not that he can't do anything. You see him out there. The guy can throw a football over the mountains. He redeemed himself from that Andrew Luck-esque Hail Mary I was hating on him for earlier in the season. And he will still go out there and make a couple good throws, but my God, some of these end zone picks he's had this year, thrown back across his body one week after another, just a lot of these broken plays. And it wasn't that long ago, man. After week 3, we were looking at them. They had just blown out the Chargers. People were starting to wonder, could this be this year's Bengals and all that? I'm sure mainstream media have had their, Doug Peterson overtakes Urban Meyer atop the all-time leaderboard tweets ready to go for about a month now. Just hasn't been the case. With this passing game, Christian Kirk, 3 catches, 40 yards, nothing. Ingram found the end zone, 55 yards. He's looked fine. But, man, it wasn't that long ago, Dwain, that we were hoping we can get multiple fantasy-relevant pass catchers out of Jacksonville. And at this point, it's pretty much Travis Etienne, and then hopefully someone else sticks. But can we even keep Christian Kirk in the top 24 with much confidence? It's getting really tough at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still fine with Christian Kirk as a low end, wide receiver 2. I mean, you're not going to treat him. At one point in the year, we were like, okay, is he a low end wide receiver 1? You know, and so that's definitely not true. I think Trevor Lawrence, yes, it's not been good, but I've seen enough good games that I'm not gonna. We see this happen all the time. Players go through a 2 or 3 week lull. Unless your name's Baker Mayfield, then it's like a 2-season lull. But otherwise, like it's usually just 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll kind of pop out of it. So for me with Lawrence, like it's kind of a tough little stretch for him. He's been kind of making things work for himself by scoring rushing touchdowns. Those didn't happen for him this week, so that didn't bail him out. But no, I'm not gonna be overly concerned about Christian Kirk. I think you're right to call out the stuff with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, at this point, he definitely doesn't look like the prospect that we thought. But he could still be somewhere in between, right? It doesn't mean that he's necessarily bad just because he's had a few bad games. So I'm fine, with these passing, weapons. It's going to have some weeks where somebody's going to be squeezed out. I mean, Evan Ingram, we've talked about multiple times on this show this week, 90% route participation, 21% target share, but he came through with 15.5 fantasy points. So like he's kind of been like a low end tight end 1 for the last, several weeks. And I will say whenever they play some of these zone heavy teams like the Broncos, it really seems to more of it go to Evan Ingram. They spread it out a lot more. It's kind of interesting that Christian Kirk doesn't see more, right? When they play zone, a lot of times you'll see the slot receiver, the inside players get more looks against that. That's one thing we haven't seen so far work for Christian Kirk because the Broncos are one of the top 3 zone defenses in the league. You definitely don't want to be on the outside against the Broncos. Like Patrick Surtain's like turning into one of those dudes that you don't want to see him. Like you do not want him anywhere near you. It's going to be bad for you. And Kirk does usually get to line up inside in the slot. So I think he's still got positive things going for him. We just don't quite feel as great as we did about him earlier in the season.
And even inside against his defense, man, any receiver against the Broncos this year, I mean, they have not allowed 225 passing yards against all season long. The Chargers got to 224. The Colts got all the way up to 200. Everyone else under 200 passing yards in the year 2022, Dwain. So, yeah, a little bit critical of Lawrence, and he hasn't been overly good this year, but he has flashed, to your point, and this was going to be a tough matchup. So, last week, if Christian Kirk catches that touchdown, isn't caught, 1 inch before the goal line, probably singing a different tune. Always appreciate having your level-headed analysis to get my mind out of the gutter with some of this, Dwain.
Well, we'll see how the analysis is if we go another week of Trevor Lawrence like this. Then maybe I'll just be like, yeah, you got to get rid of all of them now.
Cowboys took down the Bears 49-29, covering as 9.5-point favorites. Game total cashed easily over at 43. This was the Dak Prescott of old, the Dak Prescott the Cowboys paid all this money to be their franchise quarterback. Easily his best game of the season. You look at his now 3 starts of the year. His yards per attempt, 4.6 to 8.3 to 9.2. Adjusted completion rate, 56% to 80% to 88%. PFF passing grade, 36 to 62 to 89.5. So yes, we'll get to Tony Pollard in a second, but more so in this Cowboys offense, I just think seeing Dak going out there, hitting Michael Gallup for 4 catches and just bringing that different dimension to the offense, not just CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz, honestly could have been more. Michael Gallup was open in the back of the end zone for what could have been a 70-yard touchdown. Dak threw it out and then scored a rushing touchdown on his own the next play. CeeDee Lamb got another touchdown. Looked borderline unguardable out there in just 7 targets. They didn't need that much from him. Even Dalton Schultz did look healthier after last week. My goodness, just hobbling around all over the place. Clearly still playing through the pain. But man, Dwain, Cowboys, I know they got some help in that ridiculous Michael Parsons fumble recovery for a touchdown, but for the Cowboys to go in here and just score 40 points, for me, that's just refreshing to see again, because with this offensive line, like we didn't really know if they still necessarily had this in their tool belt or in their toolbox. They did, and hey, now we know this Cowboys offense, when pressed, can still win a shootout.
Yeah, and it was still, I wouldn't necessarily call this one a shootout. Like the Cowboys were pretty much, they were leading the whole time. But yes, the Bears were able to keep pressure. The Bears were able to get it closer at times. And to your point, like the big play with Micah Parsons, later in the game, that definitely hurt the Bears. But the Bears just had a few bad plays, right, that hurt them. But like looking overall, the Cowboys were still a very balanced offense. They didn't even pass the ball 50% of plays today. Like they ran the ball 51%, of the time. So they got Malik Davis involved. You got Dak involved today. Dak had 5 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. So they kind of found different ways to keep a big load off of Tony Pollard. Pollard really came through with efficiency, when you look at him. But as far as the receivers, I like the fact that Dak is spreading it out, but Lamb's still getting his is fine. It just ended up being a game where they didn't throw the ball a ton. They were leading, so they continued to lean into a more balanced attack. He had a 29% target share. Dalton Schultz, you mentioned, still hobbled, only out there 64%, of the routes, but 25% target share, 33% targets per route run. And we've seen this with Dalton Schultz over the last couple of games, right? Even though he's been trying to play through injuries, we have seen with Dak back, especially over these last 2 games with Dak, like he's been much more involved. And so as he gets healthy, like Dalton Schultz, I know he's a guy that we talked about over the summer. We just didn't like his price tag, right? We're like, come on, guys, don't spend a 5th-round pick on Dalton Schultz. Don't spend a 6th-round pick. Take the Lamar Jackson, take the awesome dual threat quarterback instead. But it didn't really change where we had Dalton Schultz ranked. I think we both still had him as our tight end 6 or tight end 7. And I think right now you're starting to see flashes of Dalton Schultz. Probably he might still be able to pay that off. He still could be that mid-range tight end 1. We just need to see him get healthy, but very encouraged by his underlying utilization.
To Dwayne's point about the Pollard usage, just 53% of the snaps, 14 carries and 1 target. When you average 9.4 yards per carry and score 3 touchdowns, those things don't really matter. So again, if they had to have had more of a pass heavy approach, I'm sure Pollard's targets would have been up there. I mean, Malik Davis and Quadri Allison aren't actually threats to that role, but we did see them, again, not go out of the way to give the guy 25 plus touches, which I do think makes sense. Are the Cowboys, Dwayne, going to all of a sudden start Pollard over Zeke? No, because they are giving Zeke $90 million. And I know it's infuriating, but it's going to happen. Jerry Jones is not backing down. We can cry all we want about it. That's the case. Like, Dwayne, I was joking on Twitter. Like, I think Pollard could walk in the Cowboys headquarters, like cure COVID, cure cancer, just be like the greatest guy in the world. I still think Jerry Jones would just, put one arm around Ezekiel Elliott and say, this is our guy. We ride and die with Zeke as our RB1. So it is what it is. The fact that Pollard can be this efficient with, again, just 15 touches on the day just goes to show you why he continues to be one of the best flex with benefits in football. I mean, he was the overall RB1 in his last spot start, and he's going to be pretty close this one.
Yeah, the difference, in a role like he had today is he gets the short down and distance, the short yardage stuff. He had 86% of that today. That all normally goes to Zeke. And so 2 of his touchdowns, one of his touchdowns, was a long run, but one of them was, down inside like the 3-yard line. So 2 of them might've been like inside the 5. I can't remember, but he had 75% of the snaps inside the 10. That's another area where we see Zeke get more involved. The closer the Cowboys get, to the end zone, the more that we see Zeke. And so we didn't see that today. And those were really the edges that helped Pollard. Where, he broke the long play. We know he's capable of doing that, but, he was just out there in more of the high leverage situations where he could score the touchdowns. And that's what, look, it sucks. I don't get it. Like if you're Jerry Jones, like, and you're standing on, you don't have that long left. Like you're an older guy. Like you want to win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't see why you can't see that he's the more explosive player and at least like make it a dead even split, right? Or make it just slightly ahead to Pollard. Doesn't mean you can't have a role for Zeke, but I mean, I think it's very clear that Pollard is the player that, can instantly change the game for you. Zeke can change the game for you in different ways, but Pollard in any moment can just break the long play.
He's not number 1 on the Cowboys, Dwayne, yards per carry. He's number 1 in the NFL among all running backs in yards per carry. That's the point here. Like, we're not sitting here just trying to be the next 2 guys to slander Zeke. I think we've been pretty fair about discussing this over the years, Dwayne. And it's the fact that we'd be having this conversation.
Been very fair.
We'd be having the same exact conversation if Pollard was on like every other team other than like the Colts and maybe a couple other ones. Don't take Austin Eckler off the field. I don't know. Maybe we'd be looking at Eckler's 4 or 5 yards per carry and be like, Pollard's north of 6.
I will say, look, all the Pollard and ETN people that have been out there saying, oh, they're just put in these great situations. Wait until like they have to carry the ball in normal situations against 8-man boxes and all that stuff. You guys can all just shut up now. because these guys are out there doing it. They're playing against those same kind of fronts, and all the excuses, all the things that we've heard. Oh, they can't do it whenever they play in these other scenarios, like another backwood. These guys are good players. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to not like Zeke or that you have to, dislike James Robinson. Like, that's not the point, but just give these guys their due. And even if they're not perfect all the time, they can come through with really huge plays. And I think there's just something to be said for that. And I think that's a trait that you definitely want in your running backs. I'll take the running back that may lose, some yards here or there. I don't want them doing it all the time because you want to stay on schedule. But if you can break the long run, you can tolerate some of that. We get the same thing with Saquon Barkley, right? So I just kind of get tired of hearing all that. I feel like people just keep going back to I didn't see any of it today on Twitter, to be clear. Because you probably just got blown up. If you tried it today, it's not the day to try it. So.
Actually, pretty similar backfield over here in the NFC North with the Bears. We have Herbert acting as the Bears version of Pollard and Montgomery as their version of Zeke here. Montgomery continuing to lead the way, 68% snaps, 15 carries, and 3 targets, but it was Herbert making the most out of his touches. 16 carries, 99 yards, and a score for Herbert. Montgomery could only come up with 53 rushing and 22 receiving scoreless yards out there. So, Dwayne, exactly what you said. I was taking those steps when I was breaking down this backfield in my weekly running back article last week, and I said, okay, Herbert's better than Montgomery in every single rushing stat. Okay, what about the study that I told you about where, okay, not just yards after contact, let's do amount of carries with 2 yards after contact on them. Oh, okay, they're virtually identical in that. Great. Well, what about the percentage of carries faced with at least 8+ defenders in the box? Herbert's faced more carries with 8+ defenders in the box than Montgomery. I see a similar thing in Chicago. This is not a scat back that's gotten on the field and got limited touches. This is someone that when he has gone out there has been really freaking good time and time again. There's 4 or 5 running backs right now in the league averaging over 6 yards per carry, and Khalil Herbert continues to be one of them. That said, Dwayne, similar to Dallas, I don't think the Bears are just going to yank Dave Montgomery off the field. He does have higher PFF receiving grades, pass blocking grades, and he still is a good running back, even if he isn't quite as explosive as Khalil Herbert. So it hurts Montgomery because we can't feel as good about him having, the 80% snap rate, just like we can't feel that way about Zeke anymore. That said, it's really tough for me to look at Herbert continuing to make the most out of, again, not a terrible touch workload, but a workload nonetheless that's going to make it really tough for us to ever put him in the top 24. For me, Montgomery and Herbert are going to continue to be guys in close start-sit questions. I'm going to take the other running back.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that the Bears, their identity is the run game, right? So if this offense was scoring points, what people would think that you would compare it to the Ravens, right? But they're just not at that level right now. You've got a quarterback that's much more involved with Justin Fields, much more involved in the design rushing game, which is great, right, for him. Smashing those, Justin Fields rushing overs. I'm sure the lines are all about to adjust now. But if you look at him over the last several weeks, it's basically been a three back committee with Justin Fields being one of them. And so David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert really being more like the old J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards that we used to see. And to your point around Khalil Herbert, look, when he's on the field, they're running. Today, he was only on the field for 28% of the snaps, but he had the same amount of rushing attempts as David Montgomery. In fact, he had, one more rushing attempt than David Montgomery. So when you see Khalil Herbert on the field, defenses are probably keying into the fact that there's a really good chance that this is a run play, and he's still playing well. He wasn't out there for any of the 2-minute offense, wasn't out there for any of the long down and distance stuff. Didn't get any of the, man, this is the other thing that sucks for him. 83% of the plays inside the 10-yard line all went to David Montgomery. So Khalil Herbert has an uphill battle, but we have at least heard the coaching staff acknowledge it. And the two have tightened, right, as far as their touches go over the last couple of weeks. But Justin Fields getting more involved is also kind of capping it. But again, it is a run-heavy offense. They want everything to go through the run game. So that's a positive. The negative is you are splitting it 3 ways. Justin Fields, you saw get a rushing touchdown today, so you've got to deal with that as well. There's going to be one of these guys is left out, right? They can't all score touchdowns every week, especially in an offense like the Bears.
You know who knows all about not scoring touchdowns in any given week, Dwayne? Tight end Cole Kmet. But the streak is over at long last. Yeah. Cole Kmet found the end zone. His first score since December 6th, 2020. Been quite a minute over there for Cole Kmet. Also want to note Darnell Mooney put Trayvon Diggs in the shadow realm. Now, I have a specific definition for this, everyone. It's when you get the wide receiver, cornerback, ISO cam, and the wide receiver dekes the cornerback so bad that they actually go off the screen by the time they catch the ball. Fantastic route by Mooney. He continues to make an awesome play every single week, even if he continues to not quite have the volume to make us feel all that good about starting him. You know who does have fantastic volume these days, Dwayne, is Justin Fields, doing that same damn thing he did last year. He kind of lulls us to sleep. He's doing the rope-a-dope, man. He's doing Muhammad Ali taught him. He's rope-a-doping all of the fantasy industry. 4 or 5 weeks of not much going on. Then all of a sudden you look up and it's one QB, one finish after another. No secret, he's getting there a lot with his legs. 7+ carries in every game this season. 45+ rushing yards in 6 straight games. I mean, at this point, man, same amount of games this season. Lamar Jackson has 75 carries for 553 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fields has 76 carries for 423 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not quite Lamar, but man, we'll take 90% Lamar because that's pretty much what Fields has been on the ground. And that's even been a little bit unlucky. He had another 40-yard rush today, get called back on a reasonable hole. But then remember a couple of weeks ago, he had that ridiculous long touchdown run against the Vikings. So, man, if you just want to say what they've done in the field, which one of these quarterbacks from last class has shown the highest ceiling, I don't know how you can't say it's Justin Fields at this point, man, especially in terms of fantasy.
Yes, especially for fantasy football, for sure. I did a video on Justin Fields last week, for Fantasy Life, and it was focused on a lot of the things that you talked about. But I mean, over the 4 games coming into this, he had been averaging 10.3 rushing attempts per game. He had 8 today. So, I mean, he's still like over 9. The passing yardage and stuff is not great, like on pace for like 2,500 passing yards and like probably 14, 15 passing touchdowns. But remember last year, Jalen Hurts, only threw for 3,200 yards and like 16 passing touchdowns. And he finished as the QB9. So Justin Fields with a little bit of efficiency luck, right, could end up somewhere near where Jalen Hurts was last year. But the rushing attempts are the key thing. Like if you're going to average somewhere between 8 and 11 rushing attempts per game, like it's going to be really, really hard to keep you out of the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks each week, even if you're playing against tough defenses. We saw him do this against New England, and New England had a plan for him. And then he just did this against Dallas today. And yeah, Dallas, was comfortably ahead in this game and had some moments where Justin Fields looked really bad, but for fantasy, like he still came through in a big way despite having to deal with that pass rush. So yeah, Justin Fields, I think you just got to rank him as a low-end QB1 moving forward.
Final note is another sheesh in this one. Was that Micah Parsons fumble recovery? All Justin Fields had to do was touch him. Justin Fields jumped over a man to avoid touching him. I understand he didn't know what was going on there, but pretty freaking wild when you see the return that Parsons had, and it could have been prohibited just by one little touch. All right, next one here. We had a fun one over there in Detroit. Lions got back to being entertaining. I appreciate that. They did not get back to restoring the roar, though. Dolphins won 31-27, covering as 3.5-point road favorites over cash at a lowly 52. So just another week, man, of Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle just piling up the stats. Tua in this one, 382 and 3 tutties through the air. Tyreek, 188 yards. Jalen Waddle, 106 yards and 2 scores. Tyreek already has now 4 games with over 160 yards. I believe I saw he only had 6 in his entire Chiefs career. I mean, we've seen the next gen kind of route tree stats of just the way Mike McDaniel moves him around. Again, for my money's worth, right now at this point in time, Tyreek Hill seems to be playing the wide receiver position better than anyone else alive. Hats off to Jalen Waddle as well. I saw a stat when the game started, and I think he's even continuing to add up to it now. But, Dwayne, the big question with Waddle last year was like, how come this really explosive guy is averaging under 10 yards per catch? And it's like, yeah, now he's at freaking 16 or 17 because look how fast the dude is. Why did we ever have to overthink that? So I would just say my big takeaway here, because we get the same kind of stuff going on here with the offense. You watch Tyreek go downfield, and you watch Tua, to be fair, underthrow him, and it doesn't matter. It happens like twice a game, and Tyreek catches the ball anyway because he's Tyreek Hill, and he's freaking incredible at coming back to. As fast as he is, like his ball tracking is right up there with Deshaun Jackson as some of the best I've ever seen here on the deep balls. So, I made fun of the crow hop and only 50 yards earlier, but again, it's a completion. At the end of the day, Tua is averaging an NFL high 9 yards per attempt. The only quarterbacks with at least 350 dropbacks to keep that up over an entire season, 2016 Matt Ryan and that incredible Falcons Falcons offense, the best ever version of Aaron Rodgers in 2011, and arguably the best version of Peyton Manning in 2004. So no, I don't think Tua is being asked to do the same amount of responsibility as those guys, but damn it, Dwayne, he's putting up the efficiency numbers for it. We haven't really seen him fully healthy for more than a couple games this year. Tua, we talked about Joe Burrow kind of being someone ahead of Kyler the rest of the way, finally being the pocket passer that breaks his way into, the dual threat range of things. Tua's got to be right there too, man. I'd certainly take him ahead of Brady at this point and probably ahead of Kyler. I think Burrow versus Tua is a pretty good question.
Yeah, no, I agree. You get these quarterbacks that play like this in this scheme specifically, where all of a sudden they have these huge efficiency years when you surround them with these weapons like this. We saw it, with Matt Ryan, whenever Kyle Shanahan was there, when he had Julio Jones, they didn't have Calvin Ridley yet. Who was the number 2 at that point? Like they were already on from Roddy White. Like it was past that. I think it was like Mohamed Sanu or something. I can't remember, but they had Tevin Coleman, who they were moving all over the place. So, you have these offenses that will do it, and they use the running game, they use the play action, all that kind of stuff. And that all those things are working right now for Tua. And it's just super hard, man, to deal with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's just a lot of speed on the field, especially when you have a mind like Mike McDaniel. But listen to freaking Tyreek Hill's target total. So he had 14 today. And I'll just work backwards to the beginning of the season. 13, 15, 7, 14, 4, 13, 12. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, right, where he's been at 12 or more targets, out of the 8 games that he's played. Like Tyreek Hill is having an absolute monster season.
Like he's on pace to break Calvin Johnson's freaking record. This is absolutely wild. And I appreciate the YouTubers calling me out for some degenerate activity as I'm trying to blow my nose here off the screen. So you guys can get your mind out of the gutters. I'm sure people would rather not watch that go on. Anyway, with this Dolphins offense, when we continue to get the great usage with Raheem Mostert, again, 64% snaps. He had 14 carries. Evans only had 4, and Mostert had the lone target. And hey, he got the scores last week. I'm not worried about it. It's just this offense is going through Tyreek and Waddle. Most running backs with this usage aren't really the number 3 overall option in their offense the way that Mostert kind of is. So I'm not sweating this downturn. The usage is still there. Still certainly someone we're going to be wanting firing up in the top 20, if not the top 16, far more weeks than that.
Yeah, and the game script just kind of got away in this one. He was a little bit down right in his snaps. He's been, right around 70, 75%. He was at 65%, but still over 60% of the rushing attempts. Still had, 100% of the work inside the 10-yard line, which is big. Did share a little bit more of the long down and distance than what we've seen, over the last couple of games with Chase Edmonds. But yeah, it's fine. It's just the way the script worked out. The Dolphins were down quite a bit early. The Lions came out really hot on offense. Jamal Williams, got going quickly. So it's one of those scenarios where it's even with all of that said, like to still be at the 65% of the snaps is fine. Like so if you're in a game where you're going to be trailing a good portion and you're still going to be out there that much, I think that's a positive overall for Raheem Mostert.
Only sheeshes for the Dolphins side of thing. Again, Tyreek had 2 long catches where with a perfect throw, he'd be dancing in the end zone. But you know what? Mahomes underthrew Tyreek plenty of times too. When you do have one of the fastest human beings out there, when Mahomes does it, we're going to cut to a little bit of slack on this podcast at least. Would also note Trent Sherfield got down the 1-inch line. It sure looked like he scored a touchdown. They didn't review it though. And then they gave Raheem Mostert a chance. He got stuffed. And then, let's give fullback Alec Ingold a QB sneak, and he got in from the 1-yard line. So that was an unfortunate sequence of events. Shout out Lemony Snicket. All right, over to the Lions now. Dwayne, keeps happening, man. I'm cursing these guys with my faded helicopter. Just fade it. It's a free fade, everyone. So you're welcome for that. But, focusing on the usage here, I was thinking DeAndre Swift, first game back, not listed on the injury report, practiced in full all week. Come on, he's got to be healthy, right? Comes out, plays 51% snaps, 5 carries, 5 targets, got out touched by Jamal Williams, who had 10 carries and 3 targets. And Dwayne, Swift is out there, seemingly healthy. You're playing him over half the snaps. We still got to find a way to get both Craig Reynolds and Justin Jackson a little bit of run as well. So, hey, Lions scored 27 points when they have been healthy this year. Like, look, they've been putting up points on offense. So I don't want to say I don't want to pull like, the Falcons, Arthur Smith thing where we're hating on usage when they're actually doing a good job running the offense. And Jamal Williams obviously went out there and did his thing with his 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 catches for 69 yards. I guess the question is because when we look at those first 2 weeks of the season, this usage isn't all that different from it. The difference is DeAndre Swift was averaging freaking over 8 yards per carry and ripping off all these huge plays. I will say just 1 week from the eye test, he did not look as explosive as he did in the first 2 weeks of the year here, which is to be expected. He's coming back from a pair of injuries that kept him out that long. Was this one performance enough for you to treat Swift? More so, maybe like a mid-tier RB2, kind of where we're considering dropping Aaron Jones down a little bit, or do you still think he's a locked-in top 10 PPR back, and this was just one bad afternoon at the office?
No, I'm keeping him where he's at for now. I'm taking into account that he's still, yes, he got removed from the injury report, but it's taken a while for him to get back. And so I think there can be a ramp up period here. He was still out there for the most snaps, 54%. Jamal Williams was 36%. Craig Reynolds, 10%. Justin Jackson, 2%. Just the fact that they even had Justin Jackson, available in the game, I think says a little bit about that. They might've been just a tad worried, like, okay, is Swift going to be okay? Or do we need to make sure we have someone to help, limit his workload? So I think that will change, over time. And Jamal Williams isn't going away. We've talked about it. Like Jamal Williams, like his role is also getting all that work down inside the 5-yard line. So we know he's going to poach touchdowns and things like that. But I think it will ultimately still shake out where DeAndre Swift is 50 to 60% of the snaps every week, probably 40 to 55% of the rushing attempts every week. And he's going to get plenty of route participation. Like today's route participation, despite playing less than what he had, earlier in the season, by a little bit, right? It was 57%, right? 65% is elite. Like that's really, really good for a running back. So he was almost to that anyway, still handled 100% of the 2-minute offense. He handled 88% of the long down and distance. So still all the passing down work. So I think he's going to be fine. You needed a little luck today. He came through with the touchdown and saved the day. It would have been really ugly had he not scored the touchdown today.
Oh yeah.
You would only had 6 yards rushing and 27 yards receiving with 5 receptions. So I mean, you would have been, under 10 fantasy points. But he did come through because, the offense, has shown that it can be explosive. It can get in these kind of shootouts. It was good to see the Lions offense, with its weapons back, show us that they can still score points, because we had the 2 games, between New England and the game against Dallas where they just didn't really do anything. But they also didn't have any weapons. Points. Yeah, they also didn't have weapons, right? Even though Amon-Ra St. Brown came back against the Cowboys, he basically was knocked out in the first drive. So it was good to see the Lions offense, doing what it needed to do again today. I do think DeAndre Swift will be okay. I think Jamal Williams will continue, though, Ian, to be like a high-end RB3 that's going to give you RB2 weeks whenever he has these 2 touchdown games when the Lions offense is rolling.
This year, we basically had 3 games together, and you can say Swift was maybe a little bit limited here, and in week 2, I think he was as well. But honestly, that seems to kind of be with what we're moving forward with, at least for the time being. So in those 3 games, snaps, Swift has 103, Jamal has 66, Craig Reynolds 14, carries, Swift has 25, Williams has 33, targets, Swift 13, Jamal 6. So, hey, it's a 1A, 1B backfield. Swift is getting the more fantasy-friendly targets, and that should result in far better days than we saw here. But give some shout out to our guy, Jamal Williams, one of our favorite late-round picks all throughout the offseason, joining Nick Chubb as the only players in the NFL with at least 8 rushing touchdowns. Maybe I won't be able to say that stat after Monday night, but I can say it right now. Jamal Williams tied for the league lead in rushing touchdowns. Great day to be great. And it's a great day to always worship the sun god. 6+ catches in 10 straight non-injured games. Dwain, people keep giving up on the sun god. I don't understand it. He got concussed against the Cowboys. That's why he didn't put up points. He didn't put up points before that because he was coming back from an ankle injury. This man has not busted without an injury dating back to like freaking week 11 or something last year. Keep playing Amon-Ra St. Brown in full PPR, even if there's a fire. Top 10 every single week. No questions asked.
Yeah, absolute beast. 28% target share today. Like he's always around 30. Always. Every single game. The only thing that can hold him back, to your point, is injury. There's nothing else to really say here. One thing I will say is Khalif Raymond, like for the last 2 years, man, he pops in a lot of the stuff. Like when he gets a chance, like, if you look at, and every receiver can win in a different way, right? So separation metrics aren't everything. But I remember last year when I would go in and look at the PFF data where, we've actually got people that are watching every single route that a player looks at. Because if you're going to look at separation data, you can't just look at targets. That's complete trash. And Khalif Raymond, I remember last year kept popping, like he would be like in the top 12, top 14, right? Whenever I would make the routes, low enough to like include him. And then he's also one of those guys where you're like, well, damn, I guess I'll move the routes up. So Khalif Raymond's not in my lid now. And he was doing it again this year, but and we were early in the season and there hadn't been a ton of routes. I was like, damn, like there's Khalif Raymond again. And then every game, like you'll notice like he's like very close to having like a huge play. Like he missed a decent play today. Last week he missed a decent play, but he was still played pretty good today. So like Raymond, like we know that Jameson Williams is still at least a month away. So now I guess maybe we're still just 3 weeks away, but he was actually out there more than Josh Reynolds. Now Josh Reynolds has also been dealing with an injury, but he was removed from the injury report as well before the game. We don't, who knows how much that means, with Dan Campbell, because we saw DeAndre Swift limited as well. So I would still think Josh Reynolds, right, with DJ Chark out, is probably still the two. But we're about to have 6 teams on bye next week. So you'll hear me throw out a few names for you guys tonight that I wouldn't normally throw out, just because I know you got the 6 teams on bye next week.
And hey, hand up, I came at Dwayne's throat when he brought up Terrace Marshall last week, and the man put up 80 yards. And I also, when I cleared my mind, I actually picked him up on 2 teams that Dwayne and I run that are like 14-team leagues with 3 flexes. And guess what, Dwayne? He helped lead us to some victories today. So thank you
there we go.
For that. Final note with that wide receiver room is the fact that, don't forget, DJ Chark got put on injured reserve on October 22nd. So he's going to be out of the picture for several more weeks as well. Don't be afraid to get Khalif Raymond in there. He had a nice 45-yard catch, 43-yard catch to set up a touchdown. Better ball, he would have walked into the end zone. Josh Reynolds also almost had a diving touchdown, just couldn't quite get around and pull off a Romeo Dobbs like we saw on Sunday night. But I'm with you on Raymond, man. Like he did enough last year just from watching the games that like week 8 or 9, I remember I made him like a 45-second highlight. One of those highlight films where it just shows Jared Goff missing like a wide open dude every time. But hey, I don't do that unless you can get 30, 45 seconds of it. So really, it is someone that I think if you've been watching closely, I think a lot of times he's out there more so for, the type of double moves, maybe those routes that are going to help him stretch the separation downfield. But again, similar to those running backs, like when we see him getting a full-time role now and making good use out of it, we got to change any priors that we might have had before. Vikings took down the Cardinals 34-26, covering as 4-point favorites. They overcashed at 48.5. 6-1 Vikings, Dwayne. Now, if you look closely at their schedule, at those games, you're not going to put them up with the Chiefs or the Bills or even the Eagles or anything. But a win is a win is a win. And Kevin O'Connell does have this offense, not even, in my opinion, reaching their full potential, but still being an above average group by pretty much anything you want to look at. 13th in scoring going in this week. They should improve on that. 13th in EPA per play. I mean, they had that big time stinker in week 2 in Philadelphia on Monday night. And I think a lot of people kind of wrote them off as the same old Vikings, but every other game they've scored between 23 and 34 points. Like in a league, Dwayne, where we can't get any consistency, I feel pretty good knowing when we put on a Vikings game, Justin Jefferson is going to be flirting with 100+ yards. Dalvin Cook's going to go get his 100 and a touchdown. And after that, Thielen will score at least every 3 weeks, as I'm quick to remind anyone every time we get that streak running dry. Unfortunately, Irv Smith hurt his ankle in this one, so we're not sure if we're going to be able to get him to really be breaking out. But it's Dalvin, it's Jefferson. Adam Thielen's a perfectly fine wide receiver 3, and I think that's good.
Yeah, there's nothing else to really talk about here. Madison obviously remains a high-end handcuff.
Yep.
But the rest of it, it's a very condensed offense. Irv Smith, we've kind of seen him bob around a little bit here and there as far as his route participation goes. But again, another game where it was under 50% today. You just can't start a tight end that, when you got to have Johnny Munt though, man. I mean, Johnny Munt's always doing his thing. He's out there 43% of the route participation. So they've really got this split tight end thing going.
Shout out to Mike677 pointing out that dual threat Kirk Cousins strikes again. Second straight week with a rushing touchdown. So early career Kirk could actually scoot a little bit. He had 5, 4, and 4 rushing touchdowns from 2015 to 2017. He only had 1 in each of his seasons with the Vikings, though, from 2018 to 2021. But hey, Kirk Vick out there making it happen lately. Love to see it. Another quarterback that is running more than he did early on in the year. Kyler Murray added another 36 yards on the ground today. But more importantly, Dwayne started finally flirting with some upside through the air. 326 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, he threw a pair of picks, but for some reason, interceptions are usually only -1 point in fantasy leagues, which I don't really get. But guess what? Because of that, we really don't care about him all that much. So Kyler, really, I mean, even when he wasn't playing that well in the first 4 or 5 weeks, Dwayne, you looked up and he was still at the QB7. QB8. Because guess what? When Kyler doesn't play that well, he still finds a way to run around a lot and just pick up points in garbage time, unlike a lot of these guys. So again, good news from Kyler. And it makes sense that when Greg Dortch isn't like the one freaking guy out there that we can rely on, and we have guys like a healthy Hopkins, like a healthy Rondale Moore, good things happen. And those guys were carrying the load here. Hopkins caught 12 of 13 targets, 159 yards, and a touchdown. I don't know what PEDs he was taking, Dwayne, but I want some. Rondale Moore got a nice little 38-yard catch and run touchdown, working way more out of the slot this week again, which helped a lot. I mean, total snaps, 45 out of the slot, 30 out wide, 2 in the backfield. Last week, 49 snaps were out wide and just 8 were in the slot. So seeing Rondale back in the slot, they put Robbie on one side, had a little bit of AJ Green going in there. I think he dropped a chunk gain down the sideline, vintage washed up AJ Green. Zach Ertz even broke a tackle out here, Dwayne. I mean, the Cardinals really went out there and did a lot of good things. They only scored 26 points, but for the first time, again, I think this was one of the most frustrating offenses to watch in the first 6-7 weeks of the year. Not because they suck, but because, again, I brought the stat up all the time. Dead last in the EPA per play in the first half, and then they were number 1 in the second half. No, this isn't an offense that looked like the number 1 offense for 4 quarters, but they're getting closer, and accordingly, man, Kyler, Hopkins, and I think even Rondale Moore and Zach Ertz, we can be feeling good about all these guys more weeks than not moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Kyler is we knew it would eventually come. He and Hopkins are just like, they're just locked in right now. 27 targets over the last 2 games for DeAndre Hopkins. He had 32% this week. Last week, he had a 50% target share. So I think he's feeling pretty good. Maybe we don't want the PEDs because he's off of them now. So I don't know. Like a lot of people thought he was on them last year or something. So I have no clue. But DeAndre Hopkins, whatever he's doing, whatever he's eating, whatever he's drinking, whatever hyperbaric chamber he's sleeping in, he's living a good life. And he's playing great. So I know there was a lot of worry that DeAndre Hopkins was washed. We didn't really get to talk about him last week on this show because he played on Thursday night. So I remember even us talking through, he was kind of similar to Allen Robinson, right? He was a guy where we're like, well, it's hard to say, did he really fall off last year? Because he was hurt. Even if you went back and looked at his target shares and stuff, if you go look at the game logs and you look at his injury report, he hurt his shoulder in week 1. And he was basically a decoy for 2 weeks. Then he got healthy, demanded quite a few targets. Then he pulled his hamstring, then he tried to come back from that. Then he ended up with the knee injury. So there were only 3 or 4 healthy games in there where at least it looked like he was healthy based on the injury report. And that's the bet. That's all we have. It's all we can go off of. But in those games, I can't remember now. It was either 24 or 25%, target share in those games. So, and it was hard to say, but Allen Robinson was the same way. We were well, he was hurt. He was playing hurt. The offense wasn't good. And both of them, it's kind of funny. I bring it up because, we can tell this story 2 ways. For DeAndre Hopkins, it's haha, you guys are wrong. He's not washed. For Allen Robinson, it's well, damn it. Maybe Robinson was just done. You just, you just don't know which way some of these things are going to go sometimes. But I will say Hopkins obviously was on another plane, right? As far as his talent profile historically looking back. But we had talked about him looking, being a similar player to, say, a Brandon Marshall, who we had seen really come back, after kind of a down year before. And he had come back and had some really big years because he doesn't need great route running, right, to win. He doesn't need to be wide open. He just needs a quarterback that's willing to throw him the ball really at any time. Not to say that DeAndre Hopkins can't create separation or can't get open. You saw several plays today where he was really open. He can still get open, but he's just one of these guys, man. When he and Kyler get going, it's hey, dude, just throw it to me. And you love that. If you get that going with your wide receiver, that's kind of what's going on with Tyreek Hill as well, right? When you get it where it's just, hey, dude, throw it to me, you're in a really great situation. You mentioned Rondale Moore. He had a season high 98% route participation. And really the spot behind him is just a rotation out, Ian. So is AJ Green out there for 39% of the routes, Greg Dortch 33%, Robbie Anderson was only out there for 10%. Maybe they're still trying to work Robbie. I don't know. It seems like Robbie would have already had a bigger role this week. Isn't Robbie's role pretty much, dude, go deep? DeAndre Hopkins is hey, dude, just get open. I'm going to throw you the ball. Robbie is just go deep. And so Rondale is looking really good. I know people were kind of low on him last week. I know you and I had a conversation about him on one of our lineups this morning. And it was fine last week. You're not going to come through every single week, but Rondale had 8 targets, 7 receptions, 92 yards, and he came through with the big play. That's the thing we haven't seen with Rondale, but we know it's there. If you saw Rondale Moore play football in college and you watched any of his film, the thing you walked away thinking was, wow, when the ball's in his hand, I have no doubt. Like, the dude is an electric playmaker. The questions were, how many targets can he demand in an offense? Can he beat press coverage? All this other kind of stuff. But when the ball is in his hands, the dude is a baller. And we saw that today. He broke one of those shirt tackles that we see now, where the guy's holding the shirt and it's like it's about to snap like a rubber band. So yeah, I like all the guys. I think it's a good call on your part. And, the Cardinals, I don't know how good the play designs are, but, Kyler's running around doing his thing. They dropped back to pass 78% of the time today. So that was really good. Obviously, they were in a game where they trailed quite a bit, but they've been throwing the ball plenty.
Saints took down the Raiders 24-0, covering rather easily as a 1-point home dog, under cashed at 48.5. So Alvin Kamara breakout week comes right as he allegedly has been the talk of some trades. The Buffalo Bills are floated out there. Los Angeles Rams sure seem like they are looking. We will see what happens with Alvin Kamara. But Dwayne, it's similar to Christian McCaffrey for me. Like, we can talk a little bit, and we're going to talk wherever he goes. If he goes to the Rams, we're immediately going to be pulling out Sean McVay's numbers of not throwing to running backs and all that stuff. It's Alvin Kamara, and if someone's going to trade for him, they're going to give him the sort of workload that's going to keep him very much in this RB1 discussion. So yeah, we can discuss if its ceiling is more as an RB like 1 to 6 overall or like a 7 to 12 overall. You're starting him every single time. I just think all the freaking time that this community has wasted talking about McCaffrey in San Francisco, it's like, yeah, he's Christian McCaffrey with Kyle Shanahan calling his plays. He's going to get the ball and he's going to put up big time freaking numbers. Is he going to catch 150 passes? Probably not, but guess what? He's still going to be someone you're never taking out of your RB1 spot. So at a minimum, as long as Kamara is in New Orleans, hey, the one great thing we have, Dwayne, is betting the over on his receiving props every single week. Again, I'm not someone that claims to be this, 60, 70% hitting on my gambling. But when I saw that 4.5 receptions line, Dwayne, I'd like cut off our entire flow with my injury pod and just be like, I was going to talk about this later, but screw it. Let's do it now. So ends up now, man, just with Andy Dalton under center. Now we've had 4 games where it's like, I believe 6, 7, and most recently 9 receptions out there. And it's on the one hand, having Andy Dalton under center and not, Gunslinger Jameis. On the other hand, Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry also not being in the picture. So Alvin Kamara finally found the end zone, not once, not twice, 3 times. His expected fantasy points have been top 3 all season long. With Andy Dalton under center, Dwayne, and with these other guys injured, I mean, Kamara really does have overall RB1 upside in his range of outcomes moving forward.
Yep, every single week. He just hadn't had the touchdowns. They came through today. With Kamara, I do think even once the other guys are back, like, as long as Dalton remains the starter, it's really big for him, because Jameis just does not check the ball down. And it's kind of funny, people talked about the McCaffrey thing, how you don't get targets to the running back in the Kyle Shanahan offense. But if you go back far enough, you'll see there were plenty of targets, to the running back. Like Jameis,
Carlos Hyde.
Yeah. Carlos Hyde had actually a really nice year. But like, even going back to like Arian Foster, they used to get Clinton Portis involved way back in the day. Like, there's been a lot of guys that, have gotten, plenty of targets, in that offense, at the running back spot. And McCaffrey's very special. But like, Jameis Winston has like basically been Kamara's kryptonite, and Jameis really he just stays down. He keeps that downfield mentality no matter what. Andy Dalton is much more willing to, he's trying to run this complete, offense at all levels of the field, right? He wants to hit the underneath stuff, the intermediate stuff. He'll still take some shots deep, but Jameis, has just kind of got that, hey, I only live once. Like, I'm not checking the ball down. Like, I'm just not doing it. So it's interesting. Like, we have these conversations, there's certain environments, there are players where it's just like, doesn't matter. Like, they're just going to get their targets, but there are certain quarterbacks that just for whatever reason, like, they don't want to make that kind of throw, and a lot of times it ends up being the guys that run. But in this case, Jameis, he's just YOLO.
Remember those Madden, that shitty version of Madden with the passer cones and, Peyton's was like the whole field and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember the passer cone. You could try to look the guy off.
Yeah. So if Jameis had a passer cone, like, his line of sight just like wouldn't even start until it was like at least 10 yards downfield. Like, check down, no, just always looking past it the entire time. And that's why he is so fun to watch. But to be fair, Andy Dalton continues to put these guys in a position to score a lot of points. Now, their defense really hasn't been good for most of the year. It was today, though. I think that's pretty much everything we need to say with the Saints offense. Chris Olave, 5 catches, 52 yards, a little bit of a down game. Okay, the guy can't be a top 20 wide receiver every week. We are going to go back to ranking him as that as early as next week, though, because, again, he is the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver. worst case number 2 pass game option behind Kamara during a given week. Oh, I did want to talk about Taysom Hill a little bit here, Dwayne, because he had 10 carries. He had 1 catch. He even threw another pass. Didn't find the end zone this week, but my goodness, if they did trade Alvin Kamara, I mean, Taysom Hill could lead this offense in carries. It's unlike anything we've really come across. I had a good discussion on the injury pod with Nick Bodiford about it. And honestly, at first I thought I had to rank him behind guys, even like a Hayden Hurst, like even behind kind of like the full-time tight ends. And no, I've come around. I got through it. It's him. Like, man, the previous concern was like David Njoku versus Kyle Pitts every week. And now this week, I'm basically between Kyle Pitts and Taysom Hill. It's really, really tough to keep Taysom Hill out of the top 8, even the top 6 tight ends some of these weeks, man, because as much as the snaps are weird and we're getting rush attempts instead of targets, like we're getting a lot of goal line rushes, and we'll take that over what a lot of these other dudes are offering.
Yeah, and with Taysom, we did have Mark Ingram get hurt pretty early in this game. So all you had left was Dwayne Washington, and they didn't really want to give him much. So I think that helped Taysom a little bit, but all the points you made are still true, right? He's going to have 2 or 3 passing attempts, potentially in a game. Today, he only had 1 drop back. He's going to have somewhere between, probably 5 and 7 rushing attempts every game. And now if he's starting, today he had 2 targets. So, I mean, he's getting utilized in every single way. You did see his snaps a little bit higher this week. Again, that could have been tied back to Mark Ingram.
Troutman was also out.
Yeah, you also had, you had Adam Troutman out. So it's, the range that you talked about, I think, is right. It's basically right there once you get to like Kyle Pitts. Like, Taysom Hill's definitely a guy that you can consider, because like, go look at all the tight end scores today. Like, there's a lot of guys that are still below his 8.3 fantasy points.
Yep.
And we know what his ceiling is. His ceiling is 30, right? So that's the thing you have to remember with Taysom Hill. He gives you a similar floor to a lot of the crappy tight ends, but his ceiling is just way higher. And on that premise alone, he's got to be, he's a low end, he's a boom. I call him a low end boom bust tight end 1, like period, but he's going to have plenty of weeks, where he's going to still treat you like a mid-range tight end 1. And that ceiling is so high. Like, he's one of the few that you can look up and be like, oh crap. Like, he just outscored Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews.
On the other side of the ball, the Raiders crossed midfield for the first time with 3 minutes and 15 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
Happened,
so that's how their offense was going. I was trying to get my Photoshop game on, Dwayne, which is always just so well executed out there. And I was gonna get the old Wilt Chamberlain picture holding up the 100. Photoshop Davante Adams' face on it with a big 0 there instead. No, he didn't finish with 0 yards. He got all the way up to 2 total yards. So ruined my day, and I decided to scrap the project maybe another time. But yeah, Davante Adams, the famous flu game we had coming, was not meant to be. And nothing in this Raiders offense was meant to be. I mean, Derek Carr threw for 101 yards. Josh Jacobs got game scripted off the field, basically 10 carries, 43 yards. Ended up seeing a lot of Amir Abdullah and even Zamir White and Brandon Bolden just for a few snaps in their own right. And it just kind of takes us to like, is this offense even very good? Because yeah, we have Josh Jacobs, we have Davante Adams, we're starting them every week no matter what. But Carr was someone this week against a banged up Saints secondary that hasn't been good this year. Seemed like a pretty safe QB1, and that has not been the case at all on the season. I mean, I was talking about Trevor Lawrence's numbers, and just any way you look at him, he's a mediocre quarterback. Derek Carr, just a smidge better, but if I did the player A, player B thing, like people might miss it, and I wouldn't even blame him for doing so. Like, that is how close they are. So Josh McDaniels' experiment, Dwayne, not really going great so far. Do you think it's just one bad afternoon at the office? Again, I'm not worried about Jacobs or Davante Adams. It's more so expecting Darren Waller when he comes back, or even Derek Carr himself.
Yeah, I mean, this was just the weirdest performance. Like you said, like I didn't expect necessarily like, this offense, I kind of have tempered expectations. I don't think they're just going to blow up every single week, but with how well they've been playing, it's been really interesting. Yeah. So with Derek Carr, like I'm looking at him, I'm still going to consider him in the same range. I'm going to treat him similarly, right, to what we talked about with Trevor Lawrence. I'm not going to overreact too much, but you're right. Like he's really not been what we thought he was going to be. As far as being kind of that high end, QB2 that could, kind of maybe be an arbitrage play, right, on someone like a Joe Burrow. He hasn't been anywhere near that. But the offense has been good enough because they score a lot of points. Like, so as of last week, it's going to change this week, but as of last week, they were number 5 in the league in converting their drives into touchdowns, the percentage. So like they were number 1 in scoring, right? So that includes field goals. So they had some good things going for them this week. Like the volume hasn't been there over the last couple of weeks because they've really leaned into the Josh Jacobs experiment. They've been running the ball more. This week, you didn't get the volume in the passing game. You also didn't get the efficiency in the passing game. Now, they had to drop back and pass 75% of the time today, and that definitely hurt Josh Jacobs. I saw something in the chat like Josh Jacobs, maybe something with his foot. I don't know. I didn't see any of that on social media, but he still had 80% of the rushing attempts. But you did see Amir Abdullah take over the long down and distance today. Amir Abdullah, I don't know how you don't use the 2-minute offense when you're getting your ass kicked, but they didn't. They also gave 100%. This probably just isn't very many plays. I would have to look. Plays inside the 10. Yeah, obviously it's low because they sucked today. Only 2. That's probably nothing. They went to Amir Abdullah, but you did see Josh Jacobs get replaced in the passing game today, which is something we haven't seen. He had taken all that over, getting all the 2-minute offense, all the long down distance. So maybe this is the one kind of game script we've got to be leery of with Josh Jacobs. You just get into a super trail mode. Maybe they're just going to use someone like Amir Abdullah more, or maybe there was something with Josh Jacobs with his foot. Sorry, I did not see anything on that.
He was
heading into this pod.
He didn't have an injury designation. He practiced in full on Friday. He was limited on Wednesday and Thursday with a foot
I saw
injury.
that.
Right.
Okay. All right. So they're just talking about that. There wasn't anything that flared up in the game. I didn't know. Sometimes in the comments, I know people, because we're like I'm watching Red Zone, so I don't necessarily get to see everything in the day. Like on Sunday, I try to go back and watch more during the week. But yeah, the Raiders offense, man. Hunter Renfrow, God, like I don't know what to do with Hunter Renfrow. Like you can't have him anywhere near a lineup. Like today, he even got to be out there 91% route participation because they trailed, so they used 11 personnel a lot. But really, all those routes we thought he was going to get, like the Wes Welkers of the world, like the Jacoby Myers, like the Edelmans, he's not getting that. Like when they go to the 2 wide receiver sets, because Matt Collins has surpassed him, as the guy that gets to stay on the field. And it makes sense. Like Matt Collins is a good run blocker, which I think is why they like having him out there, because they're trying to run this offense through Josh Jacobs. But yeah, man, I think the Raiders will still end up being fine, like efficiency wise. We're probably just not going to I don't think we're going to get anywhere near the volume that we thought we were going to get out of this passing game, though. I think that's pretty much out the window.
Good follow-up from Josh. Apparently Jacobs might have got a stinger after getting an 11-yard catch, got shaken up. Okay. Hey, we'll see what happens. Again, one of these things where, between now and usually when the practice reports get released on Wednesday, a little bit in the dark. So get better, Josh. Those shoulder injuries can be a pain in the ass at running back. Same thing with ribs. Patriots took down the Jets 22-17, covering as 3-point favorites, under cashed just barely at 39.5. So last week, Damon Harris was back. He practiced in full, wasn't on the injury report. Ramondre played like 80% plus snaps, workhorse RB1 role. Was not the case this week, but Dwain, that's fine because we still had all the pass down work, and he's still someone that with this usage is going to be awfully difficult to keep out of the top 15. And honestly, if he's going to be this featured in the passing game, you can go ahead and rank him as an RB1 anyway without the 80% snaps. So this week specifically, it was Ramondre, 62% snaps, 17 carries, 7 targets. Damon Harris had 42%, 11 carries, and 2 targets. Ramondre continues to look awfully good with the touches. He ripped off another 35-yard run, caught 7 of his 8 targets. And he was even banged up for a little bit of this game, going in and out of the medical tent, but he went ahead and returned. So we got Jacoby Myers, like it's the Happy learned how to putt. Jacoby learned how to score touchdowns. Dwain, it's been fantastic so far. So really in this offense, unfortunately, when Jonnu and Henry are together, we can't really trust them. I don't think Damon Harris at this point, as the clear number 2, has much value other than a touchdown dependent RB3. You hate yourself for having to start sometimes, but you just got to do it. So we got Ramondre, top 15 running back, and man, Jacoby Myers, look, Dwain, I already had him, I think last week, wide receiver 27, 28. Like I've been trying to be up on him, and as well as I do, like when we rank him wide receiver 27, it means he has like wide receiver 17 usage, but it's just Jacoby Myers, and you don't have to rank him that high. But in his last 9 games with Mac Jones under center, he's had 13, 6, 9, 8, 8, 8, 12, 8, and 12 targets, good for an average of 9.3 targets per contest. So everything about Jacoby Myers was always, hey, look at this guy. Look at all the underlying metrics. He doesn't score touchdowns. Now he's scoring touchdowns, Dwain. And all of a sudden, we have someone knocking on that door of that wide receiver 2 conversation. I think I'm ready to let him in.
Yeah, man, 37% target share today. And like we talked about him a lot in the off season. The only thing he needed was the touchdowns. And we also acknowledge that will they come? We don't know, because he's not like a player that breaks long plays, right? He's not like a great yards after the catch guy. He's not going to beat you over the top down the field. he is a guy that just is catching a lot of balls. And so those types of players that are playing in the slot that depend on that heavy volume, they also, they need their offense to be good to score a lot of touchdowns. It's not in their nature, like the nature of their role and their skill set. It's tough to have like these huge touchdown seasons, but how bad Jacoby Myers' touchdown luck had been was like just overdue for the dam to finally break. And so it's awesome. Like, it's awesome to see it happening for him. He came through with 21 points today in PPR formats. You mentioned Ramondre. To your point, Damian Harris did carve out a little bit more of the work today, but Ramondre, again, still leading the way in the rushing attempts, which we didn't see before Damian Harris got hurt. We had one game where Ramondre had done that before Damian Harris got hurt. This is really the second time Damian Harris has been hurt this season, but 34% of the rushing attempts to Harris, 53% to Ramondre. But Ramondre, man, the big thing is just the passing game utilization. 23% target share again today. Like, he's borderline right there with, like, he's getting very similar utilization to like Kamara, to CMC, to these other guys. He's not quite there where they are on the snaps. But like, he's very similar to Kamara actually in the rushing attempts, and then when you look at his target share, it's really good. So yeah, Ramondre, even before like this last Damian Harris injury, he was already to a low end RB2, high end RB2, low end RB1 utilization. And I think he's gotten a slight bump. I think he's just earned his way into being the lead guy. Yes, he's still sharing, but I think we've seen enough now to know that it really is Stevenson is the lead back in the offense. So I think you've got to consider him, that he's honestly still a mid-range RB1 because of his passing game utilization. As long as that stays there, like, he's just, that's what he's going to be. He's a mid-range RB1. He's someone you're going to rank every week, Ian, between like RB5 and RB8, RB9. Like, it's going to be tough to keep him out of that range. So
I think him versus ETN is a good conversation. I still might give the slight nod to ETN, but we got to put Stevenson ahead of like Pierce and Walker, these guys that don't have the same pass down role lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, Walker, is interesting. But you just, some of it comes down to, your tiebreakers and stuff that you'll look at with matchups, right? Just because he's so damn explosive. And we'll talk about him more later, but like, he's still been getting a little bit of the passing down work. Like, the raw upside of Walker, I think, is just enormous. But yeah, I mean, Stevenson having this role, if it's gonna stick like it is, and he's gonna continue to get more of the rushing attempts and all the passing down work, because used to it was Damian Harris got more of the rushing attempts, Stevenson was getting like 40%, and then would come in on passing downs. But now, if he's gonna have this lead role in the run game plus all the passing work, yeah, we got to consider him someone that, I mean, there's going to be weeks where he should definitely be ahead of Kenneth Walker. I think for sure against Damian, ahead of Damian Pierce.
This was a long way for Dwain and I to say, start Ramondre Stevenson every freaking league you have. You probably already were doing that. And guess what? You should be happy that you get to continue to do that. And if you have even a reasonable question about why not to, then your team is freaking loaded. And congratulations on your upcoming playoff run. On the other side of the football, not Zach Wilson's best day at the office. He did get us some counting stats, though, and that's what kind of gives fantasy a bad name, when you could argue this was Zach Wilson's best game of the season from a fantasy perspective. 355 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. Yeah, he threw, 3 picks, Dwain, but that's part of the experience, damn it. And oh my goodness, were these picks hilarious to watch. Just, I don't know. He's allergic to throwing the ball away. The Jameis Winston passing code, like Zach Wilson, it's like he plays with like walls on the sidelines. He just doesn't think that he can actually throw the ball out of bounds sometimes. And unfortunately, we're just the recklessness, the gunslinger mentality. We don't see enough of those hit to offset all the bad it brings, man. This year, only Justin Fields has a higher turnover-worthy play rate, but Fields and some of these other guys, Drew Lock, Jameis Winston, you see them. I made up a freaking stat for them, that entertainment index, whereas the guys that are really good in big-time throw rate and really bad in turnover-worthy play rate, Zach Wilson is just bad all the way around with it, man. He's only 29th in big-time throw rate, and the big issue comes down to pressure. This stat is ridiculous, Dwain. Zach Wilson, under pressure this year, is 9 for 47. 141 yards, a touchdown, and 5 picks. 33% adjusted completion rate. The next lowest quarterback is Mitch Trubisky at 41%. Every week in my quarterback article, I look at the quarterbacks that have the biggest drop-off, when they're kept clean versus under pressure. And every week, Zach Wilson is the most sensitive to the pressure. And you watch him play, and you see the holes in the offensive line. You see what's Zach Wilson supposed to do there. I don't know, but what he's doing isn't working. And when other quarterbacks are in that exact same situation, they aren't nearly as bad as what Zach has been. So unfortunately, in this offense, yeah, we might have days where a guy like Tyler Conklin's able to get some touchdowns. We saw that with Joe Flacco in the past. And if he's going to work well ahead of CJ Uzomah, that's good. We can start to maybe get him back in that tight end one borderline conversation. Garrett Wilson, another impressive day, 54-yard run. I think I saw a funny tweet from Robert Mays talking about how Garrett Wilson never looks like he knows what he's going to do next when he's running, but the defense certainly doesn't either, because that guy is freaking dynamic with the ball in his hands. Hell, Denzel Mims has a 63-yard catch. There is plenty of talent in this offense. We see it every single time Joe Flacco has to go under center. Breece Hall was obviously making it so they didn't have to throw the ball as much as they really, would. They haven't had to throw the ball as much as you would think fantasy managers might like. And Zach Wilson, obviously, not exactly up to the task. So with all that said, I'm expecting the inconsistency to keep going. What the hell is going to happen with Elijah Moore at this point? Because we got asked, head coach, hey, what's going on with Elijah Moore snaps, quote unquote, wanted to get Garrett Wilson on the field more. Asked Elijah Moore on his chemistry with Jets quarterback Zach Wilson, quote unquote, I don't get the ball. I don't know. Are they just going to shut him down, Dwayne? Jeff Smith, the guy that we bring up once a week as a joke because he gets 2 snaps. This time, Jeff Smith, more snaps, more routes, even had a target where Elijah Moore only had 1 as well. So it's just, at this point, man, Garrett Wilson.
You're hoping for a trade. I mean, obviously they're pissed at Elijah Moore. If you're not going to play him, you're going to do him. They should have already traded Denzel Mims in the offseason. This team, I don't get it. I don't understand. Like what? I mean, Denzel Mims is a guy that they had multiple teams come to. They came to them, wanted to trade for Denzel Mims. No, we're going to keep him. So what? You can have him inactive all the damn time? Like, that doesn't help you. That's not helping anything. And if Elijah Moore's sick of being there, like, just move him. Like, he's a good player. I know Elijah Moore's still a good player. I don't know what's going on with this offense. Obviously, with Elijah Moore, if you're playing in a shallow league, you probably already cut him. If you're playing in like a 14-teamer, don't cut him right now. At least get through the trade deadline, before you make your cut, on Elijah Moore, because you could wake up, right, and he's on a different team, and that would be the best case for him right now, to be honest. Like, think what we'd be doing, like, if Elijah Moore had been the player that went to Kansas City. As much as we love Kadarius Toney, like, if Elijah Moore had gone to Kansas City, we'd be like just going bananas right now. So look, the Packers, they're probably about to lose. They need a receiver. So, I mean, they need to make a hard run at a player like this. So we'll see what happens. But if you're he's in the doghouse for sure. Salah's sending him a message right now. And it wasn't Garrett Wilson getting more work, right? Garrett Wilson's been getting more work. But it was, these other guys. Denzel Mims was out there. To your point, Jeff Smith had
no one has a problem, Robert. No one has a problem with you playing Garrett Wilson over Elijah Moore. It's Jeff freaking Smith. You thought you could slide Jeff Smith past us? No.
Yeah. And I think we know Tyler Conklin. Like, you just have to know it's a game where the Jets are going to be getting their, they're going to be trailing or having to pass a lot. And all the games, he's kind of like, he's the Devin Singletary kind of thing. He's the Devin Singletary corollary, right? At tight end, a little bit of a different situation, but you have to have this very specific game script. But in all these games where they've had to drop back and throw a lot, where the games were really close, or they were had to try to come from behind, Tyler Conklin's played well in all of those. If you get a game where it's more balanced and they're actually out there and they had to drop back to pass 73% of the time, this is a team that has been more, like at 50% or below, to your point, with Breece Hall, with these other guys. So with Conklin, we talked about this with the Jets. We talked about, even though we had seen some really good things from the running game, that we felt this was probably still a very fragile situation because Zach Wilson was going to end up turning the ball over. And that was going to put the team in bad situations. That was going to create scenarios where they needed to throw the ball more. So it gives a little bit of life to the receivers, but still we don't know exactly when those days will come because their defense is actually pretty good. So it can keep them in games. Man, the running back situation is not good.
At it. Oh,
it's not good. It's not good, Bob. I got a bad feeling about this, Bob. All 3 guys were involved. Michael Carter he still led the way. 56%, snap share, 49% route participation, 44% of the rushing plays. He was out there for 82% of the 2-minute offense. So technically he was still the lead back. That is good enough to be like a low end RB2. I don't know that it will stick because I think James Robinson is going to continue to get more work. James Robinson, even though he just came over this week, had 38% of the rushing attempts this game, but only 22% of the snaps. And then our favorite, Ian, Ty Johnson. You got to have Ty Johnson involved. Like, he needs 32% of the snaps. He needs to play on 21% of your passing plays. Ty Johnson he is a inside the tackle banger, man.
I want to see on his chest, Dwayne. Let's make him captain already. Come on, yeah. him and Jeff Smith.
He had 67% of the short yardage work. Like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And then he had 92% of the long down and distance. So really, technically, he and Michael Carter split the passing work. Michael Carter got the more valuable stuff. We want the 2-minute offense. That's where you get more of the targets. Long down and distance, a lot of times you have to block. But man, a 3-way committee and an offense that might not be very good. Michael Carter's utilization profile this week would be good enough to qualify him like as a low end RB2, like I said, but this is pretty scary.
This last week with the rankings, I had Carter and Robinson. I had Carter like maybe like 29th or 30th. Like he wasn't a complete can't play. Robinson was like a can't play. I had like, I think Tyler Algier or someone, you know how it is when you always pick someone in your rankings that you just end up like, okay, what about this guy? Like, would I really want to do it? So you end up having 5 players right behind some poor dude like Tyler Algier or something like that. That was kind of my line. I'm not going to feel good about going to James Robinson next week. And honestly, I'm going to have to drop Michael Carter too, because there's a chance that this could turn into something gross like Washington, where Ty Johnson is a J.D. McKissick type guy, just at risk of taking a third of the snaps during any given week. We can live with Michael Carter and James Robinson in a bad offense. It's not going to be great. Now the guy's going to be in the top 15 on a weekly basis. But if it's all 3 of these guys, now all of a sudden we could be talking about each of them honestly being a waiver guy before.
Well, and this is also a game script thing. Michael Carter, this might be the best kind of game script for him. I think where we see James Robinson get even more involved is if they can keep the game close, or they can happen to get a lead, right? And they want to play, let their defense play. I think in those games, you could see Michael Carter, you're not going to know. You're going to need to know, like, are the Jets going to be leading or are they going to be trailing, right? Mm-hmm. And like, if I had to put a chip down every week, even though the Jets have the record they do, I would still, based on their quarterback, like most of the time, I'm going to bet they're going to be trailing, But if it doesn't go that way, like we saw earlier in the year, then I think in those games, you could see James Robinson really be the guy. And then you get nothing out of Michael Carter. So even though today, like it was like a low end RB2 profile, like it's not solid, because I think it could be game script dependent, and James Robinson's still learning the playbook.
Final note, Devontae Parker did suffer a knee injury and got ruled out, so it could help things for, some of those outside receivers, specifically Tyquan Thornton, but for now, still mostly just Jacoby Myers and Ramondre Stevenson in that Pats offense. All right, Eagles beat down the Steelers 35-13, covering as 11.5 favorites, over cash at 43. Just vintage grown-ass man, A.J. Brown, wide receiver, 1 season game. 6 catches, 156 yards, 3 touchdowns. Each touchdown was like in double coverage, Dwayne. It was ridiculous. A.J. Brown.
There were some good throws. Great throws. Great throws. Right over the shoulder in the basket in tight areas, and great ball tracking by A.J. Brown. Like, just great all-around play by both players.
The man ran out of touchdown dances. Like, that's how big of a freaking game it was out there. Like, he didn't know what to do after the third one. He just started pointing at guys, and he drew a penalty. And like, come on, you scored 3. He scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. It's like the old NCAA football league.
I thought he was about to get a 4th.
Yeah, almost did. He got, oh my gosh, he he wanted it too. But yeah, Lee Corso back in the day, most guys dream about scoring 3 touchdowns in the game. This guy, he just did it in the first half. So AJ Brown just going absolutely nuclear. And yeah, one of those things again where he's going to be top 10 every single week moving forward. If you want to rank him 5th, 3rd, 4th, 8th, go for it. You're starting him each and every week. Now, Jalen Hurts, it was good to see, Dwayne, some of those deep balls and just some of the good things happening with that, because it had been a little bit since he had this sort of passing game. And it's not that we thought he could never have it again. More than enough examples of him getting it going. But literally, over the past 3 games, Jalen Hurts only had 2 total passing touchdowns, and he was averaging just 199 passing yards per game. So obviously, he's fine with all of his rushing stuff, but just to see this ceiling here for a guy like AJB, wow, Pascal had a touchdown too. Dallas Goedert has 6 catches, 64 yards. Yeah, Devonta Smith was the odd man out, but we understand that's what's going to happen in an offense that still likes to run the ball a lot. So final note here I had on AJ Brown. I had to triple check this stat to make sure I had it right. And I do, and it is ridiculous. This is not a slight towards the Titans. They are on a 5-game win streak. That is fantastic. Mike Vrabel, give him the coach of the year. That said, Dwayne, receiving yards this season, AJ Brown has 659. Every Titans wide receiver combined, 658. The man's good. They had to do what they had to do, but man, I wish that Titans, for their sake and for their fans' sake, still had.
Did they have to do what they had to do?
I don't know.
They did.
I don't know.
Come on, man. Like AJ Brown, getting rid of him. Like, just come on, do this.
Couldn't beat me, Dwayne. But all right, this backfield, we've gotten some murmurs about maybe Kareem Hunt goes to the Eagles. Maybe they're actually someone looking for a running back. And I don't look at the Eagles offense personally and be like, oh, they're just, a better running back away from really being something to mess with. Now, if they had someone like a Kamara, like a Hunt, someone that could, work across all three downs, a little bit better than the at times, Butterfingers Miles Sanders. Okay, that could perhaps help things. But hey, Miles Sanders has been one of the more efficient rushers of the ball this year, pass game limitations aside. He did find his way to get into the end zone here. So once again, with the Eagles, we're starting Hurts and AJB everywhere. Goddard's going to be a top 5 tight end more weeks than not. I just think Devontae Smith and Miles Sanders, because of kind of how this offense is set up, we're going to get some duds. We're going to get some booms. But more than anything, man, it's a top 5 Eagles offense. Just feel good. We talk about some of these offenses, Dwayne, and we're like, hey, if you don't have anyone, from the Broncos or whatever, like in your lineup, hey, if you have anyone from the Eagles, you're probably feeling pretty good.
Yeah, man. Devonta Smith still had a 28% target share today. Like, he's a buy low. If for some reason people think like big games like this, it's a psychological thing, right? When everybody sees AJ Brown go off like this, they're like, oh God, man, Devonta Smith can't get anything. And then he'll be the guy next week that's going to score 2 touchdowns. He's a really good player. Go buy low. Go see if you can kick the tires on it. See if you can get him now. AJ Brown, obviously, we discussed him enough. Dallas Goedert, same thing. He's fine. 21% target share. It's a condensed target tree. These are the 3 guys, so I think it's fine. The nice thing for the Eagles today, 63% drop back rate, and they were leading the whole game. So it was a game where they decided based on what they saw with the Steelers, they didn't want to keep running the ball. We've seen them actually over the last several weeks run the ball more. So there is something going on with their opponents and the matchups that they think that they have, and that's really dictating the way that they're running their offense. But the backfield, really, it's Sanders is really the same place he's been. 51% of the snaps, 43% of the rushing attempts. We did see Boston Scott. Boston Scott had 38% of the rushing attempts today. Somehow.
Mop up.
Pure 7 carries for 21 yards. So, But still, it's not good. Like your running back has so many outs, and one of them is being the closer. Right. So it's not about saying go pick up Boston Scott. It's more about, well, damn, like, can we just get the Miles? Can we add 5 of those 7 carries to Miles Sanders so we can get to the 100 yards and maybe get lucky and get another rushing touchdown? That's the problem for Sanders. They never fully cut him loose. He doesn't get to work in the passing game. If they get ahead, they give the ball to Boston Scott. They rotate guys. And so I think he's going to be fine because he's in an offense that you like. You just know you're never going to get what you could. You know that if they just let Miles Sanders go, like, you could have these 30-point outbursts. You're not going to get those.
It actually was nice he had as good of a day as he did. This was his first game all year where he didn't get up to 15 touches. I think he was one of only like 4 running backs that had gotten there every game this year. So managed to salvage it with the touchdown. That's because they threw more. Yeah, exactly. And hey, I think you might have said it last week. Like, hey, again, I said before, Jalen Hurts' last 3 games only had 2 passing touchdowns. They were still scoring just fine, just mostly on the ground. It made sense that it was about time for that to come back around. Now with the Steelers, they have a bye next week, so we don't need to spend too much time on them. I don't want to be too overly critical about Kenny Pickett in the passing game, because when this happened, we looked at the schedule. We said this is going to be tough, and it has been tough. When you come in, first NFL debut, halftime against a very good Jets defense. Then you go into Buffalo, I believe. Then they face the Bucs, he gets concussed. Then they go into Miami, Sunday Night Football in the rain. Then they go into Philadelphia, a team that just can't help but improve their roster through some way, shape, or form every other week, it seems like. So for me, the early returns on Kenny Pickett haven't been fabulous, but there's at least been enough ability of him showing some dual threatness. Not that I'm going to be signing up to play him in fantasy down the road, but
dual threatness.
Dual threatness. There we go, Dwayne. It's about the time we start changing the English language here. But look, Freiermuth, Claypool, Deontay, not Najee, but and our guy George Pickens. We've had a lot of players in this offense flash throughout the year. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're not going to have complete zeros in this passing game following their bye. That said, like, after the bye, Dwayne, I don't know if Deontay Johnson needs to be a top 30 wide receiver anymore. And unfortunately, we're at a point where I think we assumed that if Deontay wasn't going to be there, it was going to be Pickens taking over or Claypool taking over. Right now, unfortunately, until we see this efficiency step up from Pickett, who averaged only 5 yards per attempt here, it's too spread out to feel overly good about anyone involved in this passing game.
Yeah, but the positive is even earlier in the season when we would see the Steelers get behind and they would be in these bad spots, they did not want to let Mitchell Trubisky throw the ball. Today you had 75% drop back rate. 75% of their plays they're dropping back to pass. So anytime you have that, there's going to be hope, especially if it's a young player like Pickett that can eventually get better. Pickett isn't someone I'm super excited about having, in anything other than a super flex. We just want him to help make these other guys viable. And Deontay Johnson's the perfect example of a guy that if you can be running a lot of plays and you're throwing the ball a lot, he can come through because he had 9 targets today. Like he's still a guy when you look over, I'm with you. I'm like, okay, Deontay, fine. You're a wide receiver 3, but anytime I think about pushing him any further than that, I just go look at his damn targets. I'm like, I can't move him any further than that. There's like no way. Right. Like, every week it's like 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10. So it's like he's right there. And if all of a sudden there could be a little more efficiency on the bone, like we're going to be very quickly talking about him as a wide receiver 2 again. So I'm hoping that we can get the Steelers, moving forward. You talked about the stretch that they've had as the schedule softens up, you get a bye week to work with Pickett. I'm hoping there can be some better days ahead for the passing game because they've shown they're willing to throw the ball. And that's my main takeaway. That's all I really care about right now with the Steelers. They are willing to throw the ball more, and that's a good thing.
Pickens' goose egg does come with a little bit of sheeshness in there. He did have a typical awesome contested catch downfield, but they called him for an OPI this time around. I thought it was a little ticky-tacky. I also have Pickens on a lot of fantasy teams, so take that for what it's worth. And then he also had another back shoulder chance in his hands, just couldn't maintain possession due to the ground. Our guy Mogul, who I know is a mainstay in the PFF chat, always appreciate you, brother. But pointing out that Chase Claypool, also a big trade rumor guy. Yeah, that would certainly help Deontay and Pickens really condense the targets. For the life of me, I don't know why, unless they think, what Claypool taking a dip from Gunner after getting the W was like a bad locker room move. Is that the latest thing we're going to hold against Claypool? I think Claypool is the 3rd best wide receiver in Pittsburgh. If you want to, I know what he said in the offseason, 3rd best wide receiver in the NFL. Clearly that's not true, but go ahead and make a list of the top number 3 wide receivers on every team in the league. And I don't think you're going to get that far before putting Claypool up there. Bro, he had this contested catch today where he caught it and then proceeded to drag like 2 defenders, another 8 yards. Like it would have been like on the ESPN front page if it had been George Pickens making that play. So Claypool, honestly, like you can argue over the last 4 weeks has been the most impressive of the group with, Pickens, just his ability to make those highlight catches aside. So just my way of saying Deontay's really freaking good. So is Pickens, and Claypool, not exactly shitty at football in his own right, but yes, should know a lot more about some of these situations following that trade deadline on Tuesday. Exhilarating NFC South showdown, Dwayne. The freaking win probability map was going bonkers at the end of this one. Falcons 37, Panthers 34, Carolina covering as 4-point dogs, though, over at just 41.5. What an insult to these two juggernaut offenses. And yeah, Dwayne, I don't know what else to call the Falcons offense. They are apparently a juggernaut. They are the 4th most efficient offense in the NFL in EPA per play. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles are better. That's it. They have PFF's 5th-ranked offensive line run blocking that has allowed guys like Tyler Algier, Caleb Huntley to keep on keeping on. Their receivers, yeah, they don't actually get the ball all that much, but when they do, they've been making pretty good use of it. Kyle Pitts today, 5 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown on American soil, no less. Had Demir Bird, looking like one of the faster guys on the field. He's made a couple plays over the last few weeks. Hell, even Tyler Algier caught a screen and went into the house. So it's one of those things, man. Why did Drake London, not even have a target until like the 3rd quarter? I don't know. Why did it take this long to get Kyle Pitts 9 targets? I don't really know, but it is weird how Arthur Smith, all these bad things we like to say about him, the man keeps putting forward a top 10 offense. So for that, I'll give him 2 claps. And then you can say whatever you want.
No, man. Look, at least the players are on the field. That's been our beef.
Yeah,
with Arthur Smith, right? Not anything about like how he calls a game, schematically, the things he does. We like things that he did last year with Cordarrelle Patterson. It's just been like, come on, like Drake London can't be on the field for 90% of the routes. Kyle Pitts can't be out there for 80. And they both were today. You saw Kyle Pitts at an 87% route participation. He was over 80% last week. So that's 2 weeks in a row. Let's give another 2 claps, Ian. Drake London was out there 90%. So he was actually ahead of, Zacchaeus today. So that was good. Demir Bird, 58%. Like he's just a guy that, they're getting out there trying to make some big plays. But yeah, like Smith's fine, like as a schemer. It's just fine. Have the players out there. As long as you're doing that, like I have no argument. I mean, I would still argue a little bit like that. I mean, really, do you want to waste 30 touches on Tyler Algier, Caleb Huntley, and Avery?
You have to,
Williams?
Dwayne. You have
like,
to.
I mean, I don't know that I'd want to go that far, but I mean, whatever. Like, I get it. You want to be a run back. He's obviously trying to make up for Marcus Mariota. He knows he doesn't have a lot there, and they're playing good enough that they're winning games. And so, that's what a coach is going to do. They're going to keep trying to win. We know he's told us he's not playing fantasy football. He's trying to win. He's trying to win games. But even in this shootout, man, the team dropped back to pass only 46% of the time. So really what happened is you get overtime and you get this big boost to the volume that really helped out everybody here today, because you got all the extra plays. You got 28 passing attempts today from Marcus Mariota in a game where they only threw the ball 46% of the time. And it wasn't even truly throwing it 46% because 3 of those times Marcus Mariota took off on a scramble. But it was still a positive. The players are out there. So I don't have anything else to say. Like it's an offense that I downgraded last week in the utilization report. It still looks exactly the same. It just happened to be a day where they played with more pace, got extra plays in overtime. It's really hard to start anybody from the Falcons. But at least Kyle Pitts and London are out there. So that makes them guys that if you have them in the lineup, they're at least they shouldn't be at least a complete zero, or they have a chance to earn targets.
Hey, 37 points. Good job by them. We do see some underlying things like the league high 48% play action rate. That's good. But yeah, end of the day, this isn't going to change their standing as the most run heavy offense since Rex Ryan's 2009 New York Jets. They're good throwing the ball. Mariota averaged 9 yards per attempt today. Coming into this game, he was top 10 in yards per attempt. I get it. If you increase the volume, he's not going to stay top 10 yards per attempt. But man, 16th, 17th, what are you trying to get out of this year? Are you trying to develop Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier? Maybe a little more Kyle Pitts, Drake London. That's our only beef there, Dwayne.
I will say with Algier, I wrote about him in the utilization report last week that there was a little bit of a sneaky trend with him. He was trending upward. He continued that this week. Now, I did give, Caleb Huntley actually got more rushing attempts than him, 16 versus 14. But we've seen Algier out there, in the long down and distance and all that stuff. Having said all that, might be getting Cordarrelle Patterson back next week.
Yeah,
right?
buddy.
I would anticipate Patterson. Look, Patterson, if he comes back and he's playing well, a running back makes a big difference on a team where you want to have 30 rushing attempts every week. Like if you can have a guy that's explosive like Cordarrelle Patterson, we know they won't give him all of that, right? He'll share some of this. I don't know if he'll play the Huntley role, the Algier role, what he'll do, but most likely Tyler Algier goes back to, my guess is Tyler Algier is the number 2, right? And that Cordarrelle Patterson's the number 1.
Hilarious, but true. Before tonight, Cordarrelle Patterson still more fantasy points than A.J. Dillon, Damon Harris, Melvin Gordon, Darrell Henderson, James Conner, DeAndre Swift. I know some injuries are going into that, but first 3 weeks of the season, guys, RB5, RB52, RB6, even gutted out an RB2 finish in the last time we saw him in week 4. So CPAT on the sidelines today, rocking a free Calvin Ridley t-shirt. Love to see that. And yeah, he's been posting some videos of him full on sprinting. So we don't know for sure if he's going to be back in week 9, but he is eligible to return. Fingers crossed, go get back out there. CPAT, we are all waiting for you. All right, that is good on the Falcons side of the ball. Now on to the Carolina Panthers. First of all, Eddie Pinheiro, you lost this football game. This is not a team sport. You're a kicker. You're not part of the team. You had 2 chances to win this football game. You blew them both. I do not want to hear one person blame this on DJ Moore. DJ Moore had to go, Dwayne, have one of the best athletes on the planet across from him, not just 1, 2. And he runs past them 60 yards downfield, corrals a freaking pearl of a deep ball from PJ Walker, the longest completion in the air that Next Gen Stats has tracked in terms of air yards, and DJ Moore dives and catches that. Yeah, he's a little bit freaking excited. He just won the game and he gets a flag for freaking taunting, celebrating. Are you kidding me? We still bash these guys, and then every freaking couple months we get the video coming along of Bill Belichick literally telling his whole team how great it is to celebrate. So all these boomers that want to strike down guys like DJ Moore, because Eddie Pinheiro can't take 3 steps forward and kick a ball between the uprights. It's the only thing his entire life he has to focus on, Dwayne. You're a busy guy. You got 10 kids, you got this budding career taking over MB FantasyLife. You got a lot of things going for you, and you got 30 freaking fantasy football leagues. He has to take 3 steps forward and kick a ball, and not only could he not do it on the extra point, but he had a redemption chance in overtime, and he still couldn't even get that right. So that's why we don't talk about kickers on this pod, because everyone would just hate me for dismissing them all the time. But you know what? I'm going to do it right now because, damn it, DJ Moore played his ass off, man. 152 yards and a touchdown. He won them that game. He did not lose them that game. And I'm going to be furious if that ends up being the main storyline here. So not on this podcast, Dwayne. This is going to be the Eddie Pinheiro hate club from this point forward. Yeah, that's all I got to say. I mean, DJ Moore.
Is that all?
That's all. So go ahead. Whatever you want to say now. I got.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, DJ Moore. You tweeted it. Has PJ Walker freed DJ Moore? I don't know, but he did today. Like I'm still scared to death of the Panthers passing game. But 31% target share to Moore today. Came through with 27.5 fantasy points, 11 targets, 6 receptions, 152 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, the big play that you talked about was just a great players make great plays. And that's what DJ Moore is. He's a great player. Like, God, I hope at some point, and this isn't look, PJ Walker, you had a day. I just want to see DJ Moore. Like, I don't want to do the Allen Robinson thing. I can't do it again. Like, I want to see this guy play with a quarterback. I want to see the Panthers with a good quarterback. So let's see if we can make that happen at some point. You mentioned Terrace Marshall. We brought him up last week. 95% route participation, 26% target share for Marshall. Wasn't hyper efficient on that. 9 targets, 4 of them, he caught. Only 56% of his targets were catchable. So that wasn't all on him, but still just nice to see the former 2nd round pick that a lot of people have written off, Ian, out there getting to play as the number 2 and seeing the targets. So I think Marshall, he's pretty much available everywhere, unless you play in like leagues like Ian and I do, where we were just, elated to get him and start him. He's a guy that's going to be on the waiver wire, this week. He's going to be a big name to be thinking about. I know I say big name in a deeper league, right, where there's nothing left, hardly. Terrace Marshall's still available in a lot of those. And we know it's a young talent, so there's still a chance. I'm still, like I said, scared to death of this offense, Ian, so I'm not like saying, hey, go for broke on him. But we got a lot of teams on bye next week, right? And Carolina's not one of them. So just had to look over my sheet and make sure of that because we have 6 teams that are off. Deonta Foreman, we did not have Chuba Hubbard today. Chuba Hubbard was officially the starter last week. I don't know that Chuba Hubbard will be the starter when he comes back, though, because Deonta Foreman looked really good. I did a piece this last week over at Fantasy Life. And I talked about, Justin Fields. I talked about Kareem Hunt. And then the other guy I talked about was Foreman. And it was really all about sell high. And at the time, the coaching staff had told us Chuba Hubbard was fine. He could have came back in that game last week. And knowing that really like 50% of, Foreman's snaps last week came in the fourth quarter after Chuba Hubbard was hurt. Like, so it would have really looked bad. But when you come out and you have a game like this, regardless, like would the other player hurt? I don't know. Like, I may lose. I don't know. Like if I'm that convicted anymore about sell high on Deonta Foreman. I do think it's still going to need some sort of committee. It's obviously a good time to sell high because Deonta Foreman's probably not going to have another game this big. 3 rushing touchdowns, 29.8 fantasy points. So he came through in an absolutely huge way. So if you don't need him, I absolutely would sell him high. But if you need an RB2, I have a little bit less conviction because we've seen Chuba Hubbard before. And look, they could come back and completely put Chuba in the lead. We have no clue what these coaches are going to do, right? We're only guessing. We only go off the information that we have. But I thought Foreman looked good enough, Ian, that, I would be kind of surprised, like, if they came back and said, yeah, Chuba, you're the starter. I feel like Chuba really should be the change of pace and that Foreman should have earned the starting job with the performance today.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. The question is, can this Panthers offense actually keep looking like a decent scoring offense? Because before this game, they hadn't even broke 24 points on the year. And the 4 weeks before this, 16, 15, 10, 21 points. Like the Buccaneers game was like a miracle and we were freaking out. They scored 21 points at the end of the day. So it's good. I love PJ.
It is a great time to sell Deonta Foreman. I will say that. I can't tell you sure that he won't be the starter, but what I can tell you, and Ian, I think you're kind of alluding to this, like I still have a lot of doubts about the offense.
Well, did he even get, it looks like Spencer Brown and Raheem Blackshear took a lot of that pass down work, correct?
Yeah, they did. Well, no, 70. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. 79% of the 2-minute offense went to Foreman. Foreman had the 2-minute offense last week too, and he had the short down and distance stuff. So long down and distance he didn't have last week. 78% of the snaps inside the 10. That's which isn't surprising, right? When you don't have Hubbard. But I think this could be more like a 60-40, which isn't necessarily going to be great. It's kind of like what you talked about earlier with the Jets. You're like, hey, we could live with 2 running backs in a bad offense. Wouldn't be the end of the world. We can't have 3. Right. So as long as Spencer Brown or Blackshear, one of these other guys, aren't really like a thing, which I don't think they will be. I think it'll just pretty much be 2 guys. You can probably be okay. But again, it could totally get flipped on its head next week, and we could be doing this show being like, well, Just kidding. Chuba Hubbard, 70%. That makes it, once you have a guy like this score 3 touchdowns, Ian, I would not feel bad. Like if I sold Foreman, you sell him high, and if you end up being wrong on it, whatever, you got to get something good for him, right? Yeah. That's the whole point of sell high. Don't just give him away.
Yeah, that whole, man, 2 big misses from usually a pretty accurate ESPN national reporter, Adam Schefter, but telling us, man, that Foreman could have entered back in if he could have, which obviously he didn't lie, didn't make up that information. Yeah, Chuba, my bad. Obviously so I shouldn't be mad at Adam, I should be mad at the source. And then similar thing with the Dave Njoku injury. Just, we only get, like, really, out of all these reports we get from these guys, I'd say 10% of those tweets are like actual sources. The rest of them just literally taking what the team accounts say from the practice reports. And you know what? That's fine. We do need people to help circulate all that into one area, but just sucks when you do go out of your way to get that report. And, someone that was just like, oh, Deontay Foreman busted a long touchdown last week. He should be a good play this week. You know what? That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Final notes in this one. We did have a few sheeshes. Terrence Marshall almost had a nice little end zone fade touchdown. Caught the pass, just couldn't get his feet down in bounds. And the DJ Moore explosion was almost even bigger, man. Like, he's going to probably still be on the top of the list of like the most unrealized air yards despite this big game. He was open deep down the sideline for what could have been like a 50-plus yard gain. Unfortunately, PJ just sailed it. And then he had a potential 28-yard touchdown, just a bit underthrown. So, hey, still awesome 2 games from PJ Walker. He's shown more in these 2 games than anything Baker has this year, anything Sam Darnold did last year. Hopefully they keep on rolling. And again, it's just a shame that Eddie Pinheiro had to ruin everything for the Carolina Panthers there. Before we keep on going, guys, I want to pay a few bills. I want to note that you can make every play feel exciting with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can make any $5 bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Check this out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. And to make things even sweeter, you can throw down stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day all season long. Ohio is not that much further away from finally getting this stuff legalized. I cannot wait. First place I'm going to go take my money and my talent is to DraftKings Sportsbook. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game, professional or college, only at DraftKings Sportsbook using code PFF. Note that minimum age and eligibility restrictions do apply. Also, want to give a shout out to our friends over at Western and Southern Financial Group. The PFF Fantasy Football Podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves, buying your first home, plan to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow. Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up now to understand needs and adjust goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. And as always, y'all give a shout out to our sponsors over at Sleeper. We have our usual Sleeper of the Day segment. Have my 2 leagues going on Sleeper right now. PFF League continuing to just, it's sad, Dwain. You do a 0 RB team sometimes, and it's all the rage. It all looks good. And every now and then you're one of those sad 0 RB teams that never quite manages to get those waiver wire running backs that everyone keeps talking about. And then all of a sudden you're losing to your very hardworking, lovely producers who I like, but I don't like losing to anyone, Dwain, let alone people I slack with every day. So all that aside, again, every time I go on Sleeper, I'm always just loving the ease with which you can use it compared to some of these other platforms out there. So segment for today with Sleeper is our top potential streaming options if you need them on Monday Night Football. And guys, Harrison Bryant, I think, is going to be on the cover of all these waiver wire articles. Njoku out with his high ankle sprain. I think it could be a multi-week injury. And we're going to see Harrison Bryant, the former Mackey winner, as everyone, including myself, has to say. Every time we discuss him, he's going to go out there, have a 90% plus snap rate, and potentially walk back in that same target-heavy role that David Njoku has been having with Jacoby Brissett under center. Other than Harrison Bryant, if you're in a pinch, God forbid something happens with the Kareem Hunt situation and all of a sudden he's a late scratch because of a trade or something like that, Dearness Johnson, guys, that's the real one you should be getting. And we put you on this last week already, but if there's still time, he hasn't played his game yet. So if you have, there's some leagues, Dwayne, where you can actually drop guys on your bench that have already played for guys that haven't played. If you can do that and get Dearness Johnson, again, he's going to be someone instantly that's going to cost you a lot on the waiver wire to get Nick Chubb's primary handcuff. Maybe Jerome Ford could factor in a little bit more. I understand it's not a complete one-to-one situation as last year, but 3 separate occurrences in 2021 of Dearness Johnson having that Pollard, Madison, every down type of role. The Browns will not give Nick Chubb a 90% snap rate under any circumstances, but if Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are out of the picture, they will give it to D'Ernest Johnson. I don't know why. It's the reality of the situation. So our key Monday Night Football pickup of the week is going to be D'Ernest Johnson. If you happen to need a tight end, it's Harrison Bryant. Wide receiver help, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then Mike Thomas in that order. Again, appreciate everyone over there at Sleeper. Afternoon games, Titans took down the Texans 17-10. Titans covered as 1-point favorites. The under cashed at 39.5. All these afternoon games, Dwayne, I think left a little bit to be desired. We got, I guess, a fun performance from the Seahawks and Giants down the stretch, and that was a pretty good time. But this one in particular, just what exactly was the Texans' goal coming in this one? Were they unaware that Derrick Henry was going to try to just run the ball down their throat? They thought Malik Willis was maybe going to air it out 30 times per game. Like, just from the first
they were stacking the box, man. They just could not stop them. They couldn't do anything. They had everybody down there.
All right.
It just doesn't matter.
Well, it was a superhuman.
Watching the game, I was like, yeah, there's 8, 9. Doesn't matter. 8 yards.
And to be fair, the numbers back this up. Derrick Henry, 13 missed tackles forced on carries alone. That's second highest on the season, only to Dameon Pierce's famous 17 missed tackle performance back in week 5. 190 of Derrick Henry's 219 rushing yards came after contact on the day. So, yeah, Dwayne, you throw the ball 10 times. Not much is going to happen in the passing game, but nothing's been happening in this passing game anyway. Still the only offense in the league without a single top 24 week from a wide receiver. Again, A.J. Brown, 659 receiving yards. Every Titans wide receiver combined, 658. So basically, all this is, Dwayne, it's, hey, 2 claps for Derrick Henry if we want to keep doing that weird bit that I'm coming up with on the fly. And
that's 3 claps.
Ooh, 3 claps. There we go. There we go.
35.8 fantasy points, at least 3 claps.
So again, 4 straight games against the Texans with over 200 rushing yards. He's got, I think, now 9 combined touchdowns. It's ridiculous. We all know how great the big dog is. Do you think, Dwayne, like, okay, here's the more intriguing question that the mainstream media won't be touching on after this performance. If Derrick Henry, let's do a nice scenario. Derrick Henry he rethinks life and he decides to go start a new charity foundation in like Austria for the rest of the football season. It's a really good cause. He's not injured. He's not suspended, but he's not playing football anymore for the rest of this year. Where does Dontrell Hilliard then fall into the rankings? Is this someone that we can feel like poor man's Austin Eckler, middle-class man's Austin Eckler? Last year, he did get the pass down work, but he was splitting carries with Deontay Foreman. I tend to think that would be a similar situation with him and Hassan Haskins, but maybe we're sleeping on it a little bit. Hilliard's been really efficient on the ground, and he can also do a lot more in the receiving game than either Henry or Haskins.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of my most rostered players. Like, we have him on a lot of our rosters together, just sitting there, just in case, like, what's the picture that we see all the time, the meme, F around and find out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to F around with Dontrell Hilliard. We'll find out. Like, if Derrick Henry goes down, we don't want Henry to go down, obviously. But, yeah, Hilliard looked really good in the passing game again today. Looked nice, on the ground. Doesn't get a lot of carries right now, but I tend to agree with you. I think Hassan Haskins would have a role. We just don't know how much, because he doesn't really get anything right now. So there would be a chance that Hilliard would get maybe 50% of the rushing attempts and then get all the passing down work. And if he did that, that's going to be enough for him to really pay off. And he's played well. So, I mean, he tied for the team lead today in target share, 22%. Now, Malik Willis only threw for 55 yards, so it wasn't really worth that much, but had 8 carries for 83 yards today. So he's got something to him, obviously, like you mentioned, the Texans couldn't stop anything, but this offense is all Derrick Henry. This would be really bad. If they lose Derrick Henry, Hilliard could give some fantasy value, but I know we say running backs don't matter. On this team, they do. If they lose Derrick Henry, they're done. They're toast. I know last year we said that, and it was oh no, look, they don't really need him. Deontay Foreman. They don't have A.J. Brown anymore. So it's just they're in a really tough spot if something happens to Derrick Henry. So they're gonna have to kind of take it easy a little bit on him. They've been giving him a lot of carries over these 32 carries today, and he had a target. He only had 1 target today. They didn't really worry about, passing the ball today. We don't have to talk about any of these receiving options, do we?
But it's just Malik Willis. He only had 12 rushing yards out here. I mean, do we need to kind of treat him we don't want to fall in the Justin Fields trap again, where we kind of have the dual threat archetype. We know Willis can do that, but we also it's not just because you're a dual threat. Look at Sam Ellinger. Just because you're a dual threat quarterback doesn't necessarily mean you're going to put up great fantasy points. I think Willis can be that guy, but you still kind of need to be able to throw a forward pass. And right now, like, it's clear they aren't trusting him with that.
Yeah. I mean, the tools are there, but he's also somebody that we know is very raw. That's why he fell in the draft. I know there was the hype, always going to be a first round pick, and he wasn't anything near, a first round pick. But if he continues to stay on the field, they're going to have to open that up some, because other teams are not going to let Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is really tough to stop, but there are teams that will limit this, right? They won't let Derrick Henry be the complete game plan. So that's also part of it today, Ian. They just never were. Dude, they dropped back to pass 24%, man.
They just didn't even need to.
They didn't need to. They never.
If it's a neutral, they're not playing the Texans, so we're not thinking Henry's going to run for freaking 200 plus yards each and every time. Neutral opponent. Would you rank Malik Willis over Aaron Rodgers?
No,
okay.
I still. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's really
that's
really
about where it's going to be,
Rodgers.
though. I mean, dude, Rodgers is like my QB 18, so that's fine. He's definitely going to be someone more so.
Conversation. Sad to say. Sad to say
mid to low end QB2 conversation. That's fine. Every now and then we get a little.
No, the sad to say is that's where Aaron Rodgers is. Malik Willis, like, it's fine to put him there and let's see if he earns his way up. The thing is, he has the tools, right? So as soon as we start seeing more, he's a guy you can move on quickly.
He's a winner. He's a winner.
He's a winner. He is a winner right now. Yes.
5 straight of them for those Tennessee Titans. Again, congrats to Mike Vrabel and company. Dameon Pierce. I didn't catch Lovie Smith's post-game presser. I'm guessing he's saying Dameon Pierce not getting 20 touches completely unacceptable. That seems to be exactly what they go to every time. Brandon Cooks was getting shut down until the end. He had an awesome last drive, 44-yard catch down the stretch. We'll see if he still remains a member of this team here. Dameon Pierce, guess what? He got shut down here by a pretty beastly Titans defense that has shut down almost every running game they've faced since Saquon Barkley in week 1. Not going to hold that against him. Anything you want to say about the Texans, Dwain?
No. I mean, Dameon Pierce's role really didn't change. He's the main guy. Yeah. And like you said, we'll see what happens with Brandon Cooks. Does he get traded? Does he not? I thought he had a chance today, because the Titans, as good as they've been against the run, they're terrible against the pass. Like, they get just scorched everywhere. And so I thought there was maybe a chance today for Cooks to come through. He gave you 11.3 fantasy points. It wasn't the end of the world, but I thought this might be a game where we'd see 20, 23, 24 points out of Cooks. It just didn't work out.
We had the late. It was weird. He got listed questionable with, I believe,
late week. Yeah,
but he was full. He's like, so he practiced in full, but he's injured and he's also questionable. So that part just didn't make sense.
That's like a Seahawks, injury report.
I will say, I do think, remember that week 2 when the Bills just blew the Titans out of the freaking water. I think that's, influencing their ranks a little bit there, but certainly not a secondary we should be fearing overly. But
yeah, even over the last 4 games, they suck. But,
it's just the Texans ultimately. So, awesome.
All things, point to the Texans.
Awesome.
The Davis Mills thing. Like, I think you can know that you don't have. And look, like, he doesn't have a lot to work with. Like, I do watch Davis Mills. When I watch him, it's kind of like it's almost like Cooper Rush. I'm like, man, like, he throws a pretty ball. Like, that's what I always think. But then I look at his fantasy points in the day. I'm like, he must not be able to read coverage or something. Like, I don't know what's going on for sure with him, but yeah. It's a lot of bad performances. So how often does he get to 20 fantasy points? We don't even need to look it up. Next team.
Commanders 17, Colts 16, Washington covering as 2.5-point dogs, under 40 cash. Terry McLaurin, back-to-back weeks, clutch catches down the stretch over Jair Alexander and Stephon Gilmore to go. Just basically grab, a victory out of the jaws of defeat. You can say it was Taylor Heineke, and I'm not here to shut on Taylor Heineke. He's made some solid throws throughout this. Yeah, a lot of mistakes too, but that's part of the Taylor Heineke experience. Hey, they went out there and they got the W. It's just Terry McLaurin being so freaking good, Dwain. And hopefully now with Heineke, giving him at least 8+ targets in these games, we can actually see McLaurin get back to having more consistent production. That said, these 2 games have coincided with Jahan Dotson missing with a hamstring injury, Diami Brown also being out with an injury. So yes, it is good that McLaurin is clearly overtaking Curtis Samuel as the number 1 option, at least for Terry McLaurin fantasy managers. It's good. Am I still expecting McLaurin to all of a sudden be this consistent wide receiver 1, even upside wide receiver 2? Not exactly, but man, there were weeks there where McLaurin wasn't in my top 30. Now, at least I am more confident he's going to be in that weekly top 24 again. Too damn good not to. So I think the more interesting part is the backfield, Dwain. Antonio Gibson has been someone floated around in some trade rumors himself. On the other side of things, we got Ron Rivera going back and forth with this backfield. What is it about organizations that have nothing good going for them and they just want to talk about their running back rotation all the damn time? That's what's going. And to be fair to Washington, 4-4, real life football stuff's fine. You guys can figure out what I'm inferring with all that. But in the backfield, the problem, Dwain, is it's not Antonio Gibson versus Brian Robinson. It's always got J.D. McKissic in there as well. And in this one, 36% snaps for Gibson, 36% snaps for McKissic, 25% snaps for Robinson. So Gibson was easily the best of the group. He really, I think, has been the entire season. PFF's second highest graded receiving running back on the year behind only Christian McCaffrey. He's a more efficient yards per carry, yards after contact than Brian Robinson. I honestly don't know why Brian Robinson is still a starting running back here other than he seemed to win the job back in August. And obviously it's a fantastic story coming back from the gunshot wounds, but just based on what I've seen from the guys, it certainly seems like Antonio Gibson is the better talent. That said, I don't even know if Antonio Gibson is still going to be on this team in 3 days. So do you have any lean on this backfield, Dwain, or do we just kind of need to wait and see what it looks like next week?
No, it's just going to be if it continues to be all three guys, it's just going to be a roller coaster. You're going to have weeks where, Brian Robinson, like coming into this game, we had several, weeks where it was starting to look like, you can pretty much trust him for 12 to 15 rushing attempts. And then today he ends up with only 8. Yeah. And that was due to Gibson getting more work. We had seen Brian Robinson kind of edge upward, in his rushing attempts, and as far as like his share of the touches, but today it was almost even, 36% to Robinson, 32% to Antonio Gibson. So I don't know if there's just some hot hand stuff going on there. No clue. I just wanted to say hot hand. 24% target share today to Antonio Gibson. Like, God, it's like, I don't know, man. It's like Gibson, like, why did Washington even need to bring J.D. McKissic back? Like, nothing against J.D. McKissic. I'm glad he's earning a living, or why couldn't he just go, somewhere else? Like, it would be fine with just Gibson and Robinson. Like, Gibson can do all the things that McKissic does, and he can do some things that McKissic can't. So, like, I would just like to see Antonio Gibson with a bigger role. Like, a trade for him would not be bad. Like, depending on where he landed, like, even if he, I know we talk about Kareem Hunt to Buffalo and some of these other guys. Like, if Antonio Gibson went to Buffalo, like, I think he would immediately oust Devin Singletary for the job. I'm sure it would still be a little bit of a rotation, but like, he's just a really good player in the passing game. And like, they're probably at a minimum like equals on the ground, but Gibson may be a little better, than what Singletary is, especially as far as like explosive long runs. So we'll see. It wouldn't be a bad thing for one of these guys to get moved. You mentioned Terry McLaurin. Yeah, he's looked better. The Taylor Heineke thing has been good for him. He had a 28% target share today. He led the team. Antonio Gibson was second with 24%. Now, we could get Jahan Dotson back. Like, he's just kind of, he was kind of getting close to getting back 2 weeks ago, re-aggravated his injury. So we'll have to see. It's not an offense where once we get another mouth to feed, because like Cam Sims is the other guy right now, Ian, beside Curtis Samuel's still getting his stuff, right? Mm-hmm. He had 10% target share today, but he also had 4 rushing attempts for 29 yards, gave you 11 fantasy points. But Cam Sims is basically not getting anything. We also had Logan Thomas come back today. He didn't have a target, but he was out there for 49% of the routes. So he'll probably slowly kind of work his way back into being the lead tight end as they get healthier. And an offense that's kind of been up and down, that's the thing that scares me. I think that McLaurin is still clearly the best player on the team. We'll just have to see if he can keep his target shares up whenever they're fully healthy, because they do have some other talented players, right? These aren't just guys, that you're throwing out there. Dotson's a first-round pick. Curtis Samuel's obviously doing his thing. Logan Thomas is a guy. He's not great, but we've seen him earn 15, 20% of the targets in the past.
He needs to, before we go back to Logan Thomas, though, he needs to get back that 90% plus snap rate with Amani Rodgers and John Bates there. They just haven't been willing to do it, most likely because he's been playing banged up. Just need to wait to see that to change. Mentioned before, but yeah, Terry McLaurin won the game, 42-yard catch over Stephon Gilmore, left them down at the 1-inch line, so almost got a touchdown on top of that box score. Moving on to the Colts side of things, Jonathan Taylor did suffer an ankle injury at one point. He got it retaped, though, and it came back out there. Unfortunately, another underwhelming day at the office. 16 carries, 76 scoreless yards. Nyheim Hines ended up catching 2 passes for 29 yards and had the actual lone rushing touchdown of the group as well. So, hey, it was still Jonathan Taylor's 70%. The snaps very well could have been 80% if he didn't get hurt, and they were more confident in that. Unfortunately, Dwain, it's a situation where this offensive line has been terrible, and they haven't really gotten any of the, just blame out there. That all goes to Matt Ryan or Carson Wentz, depending on who you want to talk to. And Taylor can't do everything, man. We've seen plenty of great running backs just become victims of their offensive environment, and that's what's happening to Jonathan Taylor right now. This is a bottom 5 offensive line in PFF run blocking grade and yards before contact per carry. They were top 10, top 5 in the previous years, and I understand Taylor isn't a product of his offensive line or anything, but when you wonder why he's not averaging 5.5 yards per carry, like that seems to go hand in hand. He's not scoring the same amount of touchdowns because as many mistakes as Carson Wentz would make last year, that was still, I believe, the 7th ranked scoring offense in the league. So they were still doing a lot of things that put them in positions to score points. And this year, we just haven't seen the same thing. I did not get a chance to watch this game. My process is I have 3 TVs on and then red zone, with the sound on. So I can kind of track 3 games at once. And then by Monday afternoon, I catch up on the rest of them. So I want to reserve my opinion on Sam Ehlinger because I didn't get to watch too much of him. I will say for someone that really we just looking at his collegiate statistics at Texas and what he did in the preseason, underwhelmed by his, just rushing stats here, only 6 carries for 15 yards. But to be fair, Malik Willis didn't have, a good day at the office. And I'm not doubting his ability to run well. Ehlinger did have a chance to get them back in the game at the end. He hit Michael Pittman for a potential Chuck gain on a deep crosser, man. And Pittman just let the thing bounce right off his hands. So I would just say out of this, the Jonathan Taylor stuff, don't blame him. It's a big team effort, and he's been hurt throughout the whole year. And at least, Dwayne, in our first data point now with Sam Ehlinger under center, Michael Pittman was the clear leader with 9 targets. Nobody else had more than 5. Pittman is the only guy in this passing game we're feeling confident starting right now because clearly this version of the offense wants to run. Unfortunately, Pittman going to be far closer to that wide receiver 2. Dare I say, even dipping in the wide receiver 3 territory here, though, than we would have preferred.
Yeah, and Frank Reich told us this week, he goes, no, we don't want to be a run-heavy team. We want to be a balanced team. Frank, you drop back to throw 53% of the time. That's run-heavy in today's NFL. Like, I know to you think 50-50 means balance, but no, that's run-heavy in today's NFL. So it does appear that's the way that the Colts want to lean back. They want to try to win on efficiency. They don't want to do what they were doing with Matt Ryan, which was trying to throw the ball all the time. So I thought that was interesting in a game where, they trailed by a decent amount at times, that they continued to kind of stick to their guns on it. So that ultimately in the long term could play out to be a really good thing for Jonathan Taylor because we saw them do that last year. And we talked about Jonathan Taylor this preseason. And what did we talk about with the Colts? I talked about they had the 4th most plays leading last year out of any other team, and that can be a very fickle stat. It doesn't mean all of a sudden they become a team that trails all the time. I didn't expect it to be this bad,
right?
But it could just be a lot more plays that are close, right? And a close game strip, and that can change things. It's just more competitive. The other team is within striking distance. They're going to score still. Like that can change your mentality to how much you want to run the ball. So it does appear they're going to go old school, go back to the way that they had it last year, even though Frank Reich's trying to call it something different. So I think that will be good for Taylor. We'll have to keep an eye on what's going on with the injury. Hopefully it was just a small tweak to the ankle and not one of these things that's a bigger deal and adrenaline just got him through the game because that is something that can happen with these guys. I don't really want to be involved much with this passing game at all until we see more from Ehlinger. I even think Michael Pittman, he's a wide receiver 3. Yeah. Paris Campbell, Alec Pierce, they're wide receiver 4s. Campbell, had really had a nice 2 games. He had 21 targets over the 2 games before this one. He was still out there plenty. He still was out there more than Alec Pierce, 77% route participation, but only 9% of the targets today. Did have a couple of nice plays. He had a nice carry for 28 yards. He also had a nice run after the catch reception.
He's so explosive in the open field.
He is.
A carry. My goodness.
Yeah. One of the carry was for 28 yards. Yeah. So, still showing some flashes for him, but Ehlinger, just changes the way that the complexion of this offense. And in the end, I think it will be best for Jonathan Taylor more so than everyone else, because now you can't support 3 of these receivers, and it's going to hurt Michael Pittman too. It's really going to hurt him as well, even though he came through he had 41% of the targets today. He's not going to get that every other week. He's not going to get that every week with Campbell and Pierce playing as good as they are.
Final, just a little fun note. Adam Schefter tweeted this out. For every game that Taylor Heinicke plays at least 60% of the snaps and the Commanders win, he earns $125,000 incentive. He then puts that bonus, at least a portion of it, I would hope, just a portion, to a new pair of Jordans of the team that Washington beat. So he was already rocking his new blue and white Jordans in the post-game presser. I've had a rough relationship with Taylor Heinicke, Dwayne, because him and Kyle Allen haven't exactly. I'm starting to come around to Taylor Heinicke. There's one way to get to my heart. It's my Jordans. I got, if you look behind me, a shit ton of shoes. Yeah, there we go. I got 30 pair of Jordans myself. So if Taylor Heinicke is going to do it, man, how the hell can I fault a guy like that? All right, NFC South matchup here. 49ers took down the Rams 31-14. 49ers are 1-point dogs. Obviously, they won that. Over cashed at 42. So Christian McCaffrey, 1 passing, 1 receiving, 1 rushing touchdown over the last 50 years. The only 4 guys to do that. McCaffrey now, 2005 LaDainian Tomlinson, 1979 Walter Payton, and of course, 2001 David Patton as well from Next Gen Stats. CMC touchdown pass, the first 49ers touchdown pass with 20+ air yards this season, and the streak now, Dwain, 29 straight, non-injured, not traded in the middle of the week games with a touchdown and or 100 yards. CMC cannot be stopped. And yeah, things went great. Now, this did come with Deebo Samuel out with a hamstring injury, but it's Christian McCaffrey. Who cares? He's going to be a top 5 running back the rest of the year. It's fantastic. Let's focus on something that matters a little bit more, because what are we making of these wide receivers? Brandon Ayuk did go ahead and catch that touchdown from McCaffrey. You had a great call with George Kittle, got the touchdown late about just, again, generally tight ends having a lot better time against these zone-heavy defenses. With McCaffrey being this workhorse, clearly they're not going to ignore his pass catching talents. And why would they? You saw that freaking touchdown catch he had. The dude was skying up there like, Space Jam Jordan. I just think that when we add Deebo back into this group, it's going to be like a more extreme version of Philly where we just always see one of these guys dud. It could be 2 of the guys dud. Do you think Deebo could be the one that all of a sudden, coming off the hamstring injury, we're just ranking as more of a wide receiver too? I know how good he is, Dwain, but damn it, these other guys are really good too. And unfortunately, in Biden's America, we can only have one football on the field at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to downgrade Deebo yet. Is he the best player or the second best player, I guess, now, like on the team still? And he had been dominating. His target shares had been, close to 30%. He'd been between 27 and 30%. Like, even though he was having to battle with Kittle, having to battle with Ayuk. So I'm still going to have him, ahead, obviously, of those guys, which I know that's not what you're saying, but it's just more like, is he that wide receiver 1? Is he that wide receiver 2? He's kind of been on the borderline for me all year. Like, do I rank him in the wide receiver 1 group this week? Do I rank him in the wide receiver 2 group this week? Anytime he plays against a man heavy team, like I move Deebo down because he just doesn't get targeted against man coverage for whatever reason for the last 3 years. Like, it's a long trend. It's not like just something this year. They go to Kittle and Deebo all the time, against zone. That really could hurt though, because McCaffrey gets a ton of targets against zone. So if you look at the Rams, they play the most zone in the NFL. Like 85% of their snaps are in a zone coverage, and McCaffrey just like completely obliterated them, today with that 35% target share, dude. To McCaffrey. Jesus. So it's people saying, oh man, the 49ers, they don't target running backs. Like, okay, well, if their name's Christian McCaffrey, you freaking do. Cam Newton doesn't throw to running backs. If their name is Christian McCaffrey, they do. Like, the answer is just, if their name is Christian McCaffrey, yes, they do. Doesn't matter what situation. Like, I don't care if you're playing on the damn moon. Like, they're going to throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey. So Deebo, I think this does hurt, Ian. We need the 49ers to throw the ball more. We need the 49ers to be in games where they're getting pushed what I will say is they drop. I know this doesn't sound good, but they dropped back to pass 55% of the time today, but they led a lot.
Yeah.
What we've seen in games, this year, we've seen the 49ers in a game script like this just run the heck out of the ball. We'll see their drop back rate at a 45%. So to be at 55%, the league average is actually 50% when you're leading by 4 or more points. So they're actually above the NFL average in this game and their drop back rate. So I want to see them in more close games, get them in a few more trailing scripts. I think overall this is a slight positive, but to your point, it's still a lot to spread around, across all 4 guys. I will say McCaffrey, complete bell cow roll. 79% of the rushing attempts, 81% of the snaps, had all the 2-minute stuff, everything we would expect. And I already mentioned the 35% target share, but the route participation was great. 72%. That's elite. So any concerns people had about McCaffrey, which why would you? If you did, don't worry about it.
And honestly, concerns about any of these guys, I don't want to overstate this. It's similar to what we said about Philly. Like, this is a really good offense with really good players everywhere. So guess what? If there is going to be someone that can make the most out of a little bit less opportunity, probably someone like Kittle or Deebo.
Yeah, Jimmy G needs to do the Tua. Come on, man. Let's go, Jimmy G. Let's do the Tua thing. Come on.
He's got the weapons
to do it. You've got the weapons to do it. Like, this offense could be Miami.
Mike McDaniel's like cool Gen Z Shanahan who's willing to throw the ball. Shanny's still like, nah, I gotta cock.
Just like I said, it was a positive today. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but given how much they led in this game to be at a 55% drop back rate, it's a big step for Mike, not for Mike Shanahan.
I was just about to say, I feel like Kyle probably talks to Mike after every game, and if he starts airing the ball a little too much, Mike's like, gotta get back to that run game, Kyle. Mike McDaniel, he's probably smoking a joint with someone instead.
Puts him on a conference call with Terrell Davis. Yeah. Knowing Olandis Gary and Mike Anderson. Listen to these guys, son.
Did I bet in the run game in the 97 Super Bowl, Kyle? What do you know about that?
All right. Hey, well, at least they could get Daddy on the phone, Ed McCaffrey, with Christian. There we go.
On the Rams side of things, so quickly, Cooper Kupp, he got rolled up on the end of the game. They threw him a fucking screen pass down 17 with 1 minute left in the game. Like, come on, guys. Just what the hell is the point of that? The dude was at 79 yards. Like, even if you're trying to get him over 100, it's week 8. Come on at that. So he walked off. It didn't look great, but he said in the postgame he dodged a bullet. And our guy, Fantasy Points Finest, Dr. Edwin Porras, said both ankles actually got twisted up on in a classic lateral low ankle sprain. So might be a little banged up, but it does sound like Kupp did avoid, that high ankle sprain, which of course we cannot be dealing with. Had his usual 8 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown. Nothing else went right for this offense because nothing has gone right for this offense really all season long. Matthew Stafford has thrown for multiple touchdowns in exactly one game this year, just 251 passing yards per game. So Allen Robinson made a nice sideline catch or two, but still just 54 scoreless yards. Tyler Higbee was in and out. He suffered an arm and neck injury. When he did get a wide open crosser that looked like he was going to have all sorts of room to run downfield, unfortunately, he dropped it. So, yeah, both those guys, including Higbee. I'm just not in on Higbee really continuing this, Dwayne. The two worst parts of Sean McVay's stretch with the Rams have coincided with Tyler Higbee having his most production. Sean McVay doesn't go to bed at night dreaming of ways to scheme up Tyler Higbee. It's like Matthew Stafford panics and decides to throw him the ball a bunch of times. So, volume's volume. Look, I still had to rank the guy like tight end 7 or 8 this week because I get how it is out there. So I'm not telling you guys to go ahead and cut Tyler Higbee, but I would definitely try to sell him if someone thinks you're legit looking at a top 5, top 6 tight end. Tyler Higbee this year is basically like, I view him as Dalton Schultz. He's someone that when the volume is there, okay, he can exist and catch the ball and, get whatever volume is there, but he's not going to be someone that's going to make more out of it like a Dallas Goedert. So if someone confuses that, go ahead and, take advantage. The big story, though, is going to be this backfield. Darrell Henderson technically led the way with 41% snaps, 4 carries and 2 targets, but it was Ronnie Rivers, with the actual 8 carries. Malcolm Brown had 5 carries in his own right. So they're going to trade for a running back. This is not the Ronnie Rivers show as much as maybe are there stands out there for Ronnie Rivers, Dwayne? I'm not really sure, but it seems inevitable to me in the next 2 days they add someone. Or if not, we're hearing that Cam Akers is coming back. And regardless, you look at these running backs and the expected points are just under 10 for all of them. This has been a terrible offense that's not throwing the football consistently to them. I know Ronnie finally did have some catches today, but you're down 17. Your running backs probably should catch the ball. It's an offense that, it's sad to say, it's Cooper Kupp and arguably no one else except for kind of Higbee.
Yeah. The running backs, it was a complete rotation. Ronnie Rivers did get the start. 40% of the rushing attempts. You had Darrell Henderson slightly above him in the snap total, 41% versus 36%. And then Malcolm Brown was out there, 22%. So just a complete mess. The offensive line is terrible. They trail all the time, so they don't have a lot of volume in the run. There's not a lot to like. You got a 3-way committee and a really bad offense with a bad offensive line. Like, this is the worst. Like, I don't even want a running back to go here. Like, I don't want Kareem Hunt to go here. I don't want anyone to go to the Rams. Like, they suck. Their offensive line is absolutely dreadful. Would one of those guys take over and maybe end up being okay? I mean, maybe. But I mean, it's really bad. Like, when you watch the line, when I was watching that, when that game was on today, like, I was just watching the offensive line and I was just watching it just cave in. Like, as soon as the snap would happen, like this offensive line's got some major issues. I will say Tyler Higbee, something interesting. Now, he was dinged up during this game. I know he went to the blue tent at one point, still had 69% of the snaps. But the week before they had their bye, they had this weird thing, Ian, where he had the snaps, but his route participation was really low. And we saw it again this weekend, only 37% route participation. What did we just say was really bad? The offensive line. Yeah. If you're out there 69% of the snaps and you only run a route 37% of the time, you know what you're doing? I don't have it right in front of me. Your ass is blocking. They're keeping Tyler Higbee in to block. So that is going to kill that's twice now. That's 2 weeks in a row that we've seen this data point. Tyler Higbee's getting a big fat downgrade in the utilization report. Like targets per route run, Tyler Higbee's still doing what he's doing earlier in the season. He was 36% of the time he ran a route, he got a target. He is just not running enough routes, and he can't, because when he does, Matt Stafford gets killed. So it's a bad situation. That could potentially be a good thing, even though it's still a bad offense. That could be a good thing for Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson has had his 2 best games now coinciding with this role change for Tyler Higbee, having to keep his ass in the block, right? So Robinson gets a slight upgrade. Tyler Higbee gets a downgrade. We'll have to keep an eye, to your point, on Cooper Kupp. We did see Van Jefferson back this week. He was out there for 61% of the routes. He did overtake Bennett Skowronek. We use the full name here, Bennett, who was at 50%. So they also utilize so the snap rate for Higbee was down at 69%. So not only is he staying in the block, they're using 4 wide receivers some. And so there's a lot of bad stuff going on right now for Tyler Higbee. Now the 4 wide receiver stuff could be tied to injury.
I think they're using Skowronek because they kind of use him almost like an H-back sometimes. Like
they move him around.
So I think he's actually probably the problem for Higbee's route rate. That makes sense. Actually.
It could be. Yeah, they do. You're right. They do move him around. They put him in motion a lot. He looks more like a wing back, So this is bad stuff for Tyler Higbee. And it's not on him. It's not necessarily his performance. It's the Rams are having to try to do anything they can to make up for these offensive line woes.
Allen Robinson playing a little better, but going into this week, he literally was tied with Bennett Skowronek himself in targets. So like Higbee had a good 20 more than the guy. It's just too bad of an offense right now for Robinson not to be getting peppered with targets to actively trust him. In a sad world, Dwayne, let's say Cooper Kupp needs 1 week to get right. They're just being cautious. Like, where would you rank Allen Robinson as the no doubt number one?
You still put him in a high-end wide receiver 3.
That's fair.
That's fair. Wouldn't be a low end, but this is a slight upgrade for him. It's 2 weeks in a row. I don't have the last game right in front of me. I don't want to type on the computer and make a bunch of noise on the podcast, but like, I want to say he was right at 24% last game.
Okay.
Somebody can check me on that, but 25% this game. So his 2 best games for sure, as far as the target share goes. So I think he's just more trustworthy wide receiver 3. If he surprises you with anything more than that, like, fine, that's great. But don't bench another wide receiver 2 for him. God, no.
This is one of those things we talked about it in the Cowboys offense earlier in the season with the running backs and the Patriots. Like, one of the assumptions in LA was this was going to be a top 10, 12 scoring offense when it's not. This usage that would have been fine in the top 10 scoring offense all of a sudden isn't when it's it's a bottom 5 one. Couple sheeshes just real quick. A-Rob did actually draw a defensive pass interference in the end zone when it looked like he might have had a chance to catch it. Otherwise, they did a cool guy move, Dwayne. We always ask him to do this. They went back and they threw him a fade on the next play. That didn't work as well. So sucks to suck for A-Rob. Malcolm Brown got stuffed at the 1 yard line. Awesome hit by Fred Warner. Matthew Stafford ran in on the next play. And I mentioned that Tyler Higbee drop from before.
I could never figure out it happened so fast. Was Stafford throwing the ball away on that one play, or was he actually trying to target Robinson when it was like, I don't know if you saw it.
The sidearm?
Yeah, the sidearm where it was basically a ball almost in the dirt, like a low throw. Like that was a crazy throw if that was intentional.
He has 1 or 2 of those sidearms every single week. He had there was this 2 week stretch where he hit Higbee in the face with a sidearm and it was incomplete. And the next week Higbee was wide open. He skipped like he was skipping a rock, across the pond, but instead of the pond, it was a football field. So it was an incomplete pass. And obviously that didn't work out. So the Matthew Stafford experience, always a joy getting some of those sidearms. Seahawks took down the Giants in a battle of inexplicably 2 of the NFC's best. 27-13. Seattle covered as 3-point favorites. The under cashed at 44.5. Kenneth Walker doing his thing, actually went out there and had a pretty robust 76% snap rate. Another game where Seattle was able to play with the lead for most of the time. We did have Travis Homer back in this one for the first time in quite a bit. Didn't do really anything to take away Kenneth Walker's usage, more so just relegated DJ Dallas to a true only a couple snaps, number 3 back. So Kenneth Walker, again, Dwayne and I can maybe debate on like Ramondre Stevenson versus Kenneth Walker. Guess what? You're starting both of them. If by some miracle you have them too, and Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey, like, okay, it's a good conversation to have, but maybe don't have it that loud because everyone's going to think you're just spoiled, and no one likes hearing someone bragging about that good of a fantasy team. So good problem to have with these wide receivers. I mean, Tyler Lockett, one of the worst 5-catch, 63-yard touchdown games you will ever see. He had a 33-yard touchdown hit off his helmet and fall incomplete. And then he had another potential 21-yard touchdown. Beautiful throw by Geno Smith, only was able to get 1 foot down. Marquise Goodwin dropped an 18-yard touchdown. I mean, Geno Smith had 212 yards and 2 scores. Could have honestly had 4 or 5 touchdowns in this one. So it was great to see DK Metcalf get back out there. You know, that knee injury, I thought it was going to knock him out for a month.
Jeez.
And hand up. I gave Pete Carroll a lot of shit. I would argue he's deserved it based on his past, but this time he was an optimist, and that optimism rung true. And because of that, DK Metcalf went out there and did DK Metcalf things. So Pete Carroll,
it makes me wonder, Ian, did DK Metcalf last week just really need to take a crap again? And he didn't want to own up to it.
He's like, I can't put it out there.
Patellar tendon and you come back and play like this. Like, I don't even see how that's possible.
DK was just too embarrassed to say it twice, so he had to do this whole fake knee injury thing. That's a hell of a
porta potty on the sideline for DK.
That's a hell of a conspiracy theory, dude. Oh my. So again, could have been a much bigger day from Geno, and he continues to carry him, man, and he's doing it in style. That's the thing. This is not. We talk a little about Bailey Zappi's like numbers being a little bit empty, just because. Not that there's anything wrong with taking the layups. Go ahead. You know, you don't get broke taking a profit.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not there's anything wrong with that. This year, though, big time throws. Only Josh Allen and yes, even Tom Brady have more big time throws than Geno. Only Josh has the higher percentage. PFF's third highest graded passer on the season. They asked Tyler Lockett, like, what's the key to success, Dwayne? And Tyler Lockett said, it's amazing what we can accomplish when no one cares who gets the credit. Just twisting that final. Tyler Lockett's out on Russ. If Tyler Lockett doesn't like someone, man, that's how you know it's real. So
Tyler Lockett had kind of made some comments like that a year before, but anyway, yeah.
It's Geno Smith's world. We're just happy to be living in it, and this Seahawks offense is inexplicably awesome. I don't even have a question, man. It's
Tyler Lockett could have scored like 30 today. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, like could have gone off. He's probably going to be my sheesh player of the week. Him or Mike Evans.
It sounds like it. Yeah. Nothing else for me to add either. Like Kenneth Walker, was fine. 77% of the snaps, 87% of the rushing attempts. The Giants did a nice job of bottling him up. You can't just go completely berserk every single freaking week. Like it happens. Like players have bad games. 20% of the long down and distance stuff still went to him. They didn't use the 2-minute offense today, so that wasn't a factor. The thing I liked about the Seahawks today, they got into a situation where they were leading, in the second half of the game. And their drop back rate was 64%. And we continue to see this, they've been right around the league average, but we've seen a couple of games where they're slightly above. So they are leaning into the passing game. That's really good for Tyler Lockett. That's good for DK Metcalf. We've talked about this in the past. They're also, I don't have their, play clock data for tonight in front of me, but they've been in the top 3 of the NFL, right, for average time remaining on the clock that they're snapping the ball with neutral scripts. So they're leaving plenty of, it's not like the old Tony Romo offense in Dallas. Every time it's the double zeros before he snaps it. They're running plays, which is so good, man. It's so good to see, for a team that ran 2.5 games less of plays last year than the Buffalo Bills, to see them actually out here running plays. Because that means that these 25 and 30% target share numbers, when we get those for Metcalf or Lockett, instead of that being man, he had a 35% target share, he had 4 targets. It's actually a 10. And so when you get something like that for these players, it's just been huge for Lockett. It's been huge for Metcalf. I mean, it moved both of Lockett moved from a low end wide receiver 3 to a high end wide receiver 2 in 3 weeks. Metcalf is a low end wide receiver 1. You could argue he's a mid range wide receiver 1 when he's healthy, right? In this offense now.
And he could have even had a bigger day. He was open from about 42 yards out. Perfect pass, could have been a touchdown, at least inside the 5. Rare misfire from Geno. But yeah, you mentioned the Romo offense when they take the play clock down to 1. Same thing with Peyton audibling all the time back in the day.
Yeah.
I remember when Madden first came out with their superstar mode, I was a running back. I get drafted on the Colts. I'm like, oh, this will be sick. I'm one of the best offenses in the league. Worst 3 hours of my life trying to sit there at running back, and Peyton's audibling to play every single time. Just time and time again, he switches to it I'm blocking. Oh, okay, I look away. No, he switched it back to a run. Miss 9-year-old Ian with that. Okay, on the other side of the ball,
awesome.
Richie James suffered a concussion. Daniel Jones banged up his throwing hand, could have led to a little bit of his inefficiency through the air. Another week of Darius Slayton not producing Wan'Dale Robinson, but I understand the allure of what Robinson could be. Ultimately, it's a passing game that I think has 6 or 7 passing touchdowns this season. We're going to see duds like this. End of the day, Saquon Barkley on pace for 2,057 total yards and 11 touchdowns. Kings stay Kings. Anything else you want to add for the New York Giants, Dwain?
No, Wan'Dale's fine. Like the route participation is the main thing we want to make sure is still there, and it was 85%. That was second on the team. Your favorite, Marcus Johnson, was out there running his win.
Yeah.
He actually had a 17% target share today. Didn't turn into much. He had 1.3 fantasy points, but Darius Slayton came through led the team with a 20% target share. But Wan'Dale's going to be fine. Like it just didn't work out this week. I still would anticipate him leading this team in targets the rest of the way, assuming the Giants don't do something as far as the trade goes.
Bills took down the Packers Sunday Night Football. Dwain and I caught about the first half of this one, 27-17. I believe the line ended at 10.5, so Packers actually found a way to get a little cover out of that. Good for them. Over on the Bills side of things, Devin Singletary, 44 snaps, James Cook just 15. Another week of Zach Moss being out of the picture. So you said before, Dwain, just like having outs, and one of the things with Miles Sanders was the fact that when games can blow out, okay, Boston Scott can come in at the end. Not having Zach Moss there for Devin Singletary helps. I know they're willing to just give James Cook the ball as well when they get up by 20, 30 points, but we'll take a two-back committee, and accordingly, we did see Singletary get 14 carries and a target, make good use out of them as always. He did have a situation where he was just short of the goal line. Next play, short touchdown to Dawson Knox. So that'll happen, but it's more and more evidence, man, especially coming out of a bye where we have seen rookie running backs get that bump. We'll see what happens with the trade deadline. I don't know why the Bills would spend a second-round pick on a running back and then trade for another one, but maybe it's legal technically. Devin Singletary still very much. I honestly kind of put him like right next to Raheem Mostert in the mid-tier of my RB2s, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, I had him low end today just because the data that we've seen recently, where when the Bills are ahead, right, we know that we don't get as much Singletary. And we did see that. We saw a little bit more work for James Cook tonight. 5 carries, 35 yards for James Cook tonight. So he had a nice little game, and relatively speaking. He also had a reception for 41 yards. So anytime we can get a little James Cook love, we'll take it. He's a guy that we liked a lot in the preseason. I know it hasn't worked out so far, but if you're in the league, I'm keeping him. Yeah, exactly. Look, if you've learned anything this year, like things can change really quick. In the end, it could be injury. It could just be rug getting pulled out from under you and they make a change. And we've seen it happen both ways. So yeah, he's a player that still plays on a good offense. So if you're in a deep league, obviously you're fine with that. Stephon Diggs did Stephon Diggs things, and told Jair Alexander about it like the whole time that it happened. So you love to see that.
And Jair didn't even, I thought Jair was going to shadow him because he shadowed he shadowed Terry for the first time in like 2 years last week. So I figured it was going to, get going. They have that stare down, not so much. So it was Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs, both running 26 routes. McKenzie and Shakir continued to split. So for now, Diggs, obviously, one ranking wide receiver 1, go for it. Gabriel Davis, he busted here. Keep him in that lineup because a boom is never too far behind. On the Green Bay side of things, if anyone in the comments still has any further word on if A.J. Dillon came back from that injury.
He came back.
Awesome.
Back in the game. Yeah.
Good news. Okay, because when Dwain and I were starting, he mentioned that and it did not look good to start. So at the end of the day, Aaron Jones, 44 snaps, 20 routes run. A.J. Dillon, 28 snaps and 14 routes run. Another game of Aaron Jones just slashing his way to an awfully efficient rushing effort. Unfortunately, this Packers offense not scoring as much as we would have hoped, not given the same opportunities. But Dwain, it's back-to-back weeks of Jones not being a 50-50 back, being a pretty damn clear lead back. Enough for you to get him back in that top 12. Like maybe if not, just because like there kind of are, I think, a lot of good lead running backs in the league right now getting these opportunities. But either way, I'm feeling much better about Jones's rest of the season outlook, even if we don't have that top 3, top 4 ceiling we were hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, he's a low end RB1. That's where I had him this last week. I might have had him just outside of it. Exactly. I tier it. So it is, my cut isn't always like at 12, right? One week I may actually have 14 guys that grade out as RB1s, right? One week I may have 10, so it just really depends on like how everything works out. But he was right there, this week. And I expected this week because we really had the trailing game script. He's the better guy, as far as integrating into the passing game beyond like just, swing pass kind of stuff. So, and that wasn't always playing out earlier in the season, but over these last couple of games, it has seemed to matter. I went back because I was actually surprised when I went back and looked at the splits, because we can run this stuff all kinds of ways with the PFF tools in the background. Ian, that. And so like I ran it like all sorts of way on this Packers offense. And like one of the things that kind of surprised me is even when I went and looked at like, okay, trailing by 7+ points, like if you looked at it for the whole season, it was still pretty close between Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. But then over the last couple of games, and I'll have to look at what happened tonight. It does seem like they're kind of leaning more to Jones in these trailing scripts, which seems to be like this might be more the norm for the Packers offense moving forward because they just don't have enough weapons to keep things going.
Romeo Doubs, 62 yards in a beautiful 26-yard touchdown, turned his body around like 3 times. Not sure he needed to, but whatever. Came down with the ball at the end of the day after getting called out, by Aaron in the media. Samori Toure also with a touchdown. Hey, I was talking on his Bengals podcast this morning, how to give a pick for this game. And I was like, can't give you anything about why the Packers should cover this, based on what I've seen and what the numbers say. But sometimes the NFL is weird and it's a lot closer than we expect. And that's basically what ended up happening here. So obviously the Packers now just 3-5 entering. I believe they're on a bye next week, right, Dwayne?
No, Packers are not. You got Browns, Cowboys, Broncos, Giants, Steelers, and 49ers on a bye.
6-team bye week. Wow, we're going to spend time with the family this week.
We are.
Look at that. Okay, so not on a bye. I will say I felt like they had something they can build on here. Getting Dobbs and the Torrey touchdowns. I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic for the Packers. I maintain that Rodgers and Jones, and LaFleur.
They just got to go trade, man. Go trade for a receiver. Why waste a year of Aaron Rodgers? Especially when you've got these disgruntled guys around the league that want to be moved, like an Elijah Moore. So you just got to go make a deal, even if it means giving up a first-round pick. I mean, what are you waiting on? The guy's a good player.
And with that, it's going to wrap up another lovely edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Appreciate you guys sticking with us this whole time, especially the live crowd. That's been a nice new wrinkle this year. And, I appreciate all you other than the Russian porn bots that always find a way to come say hello as well. But again, hey, if you're a Russian porn bot and you want help on your fantasy football team, we are the podcast to come hang out with. Dwayne, let people know what you got going on over at MB FantasyLife. But truly, man, look, people, they got a lot of bills, they got a lot of things, they, girlfriends, boyfriends, they got to save up money, man. So don't go touting these people a bunch of expensive shit that they can't afford, man. All right. Be reasonable here.
I'll try not to, since everything's free over at fantasylife.com.
It's all free.
Yeah,
wow.
It's all free.
Wow.
We've got all sorts of tools. We've got stuff there for your waiver wire that will come out on Monday, and we update it on Tuesday. We actually rank all the waivers. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. Obviously the utilization report. Then I've got my rankings and tiers, which typically comes out either Wednesday night or first thing Thursday morning. I'm updating those throughout the week. And then the newsletter, you guys got to go get it. It's free. You can go over to my Twitter handle at Dwain, DWAIN McFarland, MCFARLAND. You don't have to follow me if you don't want to, but at least click subscribe on the newsletter. You'll see it, in my profile, and you guys can get 5 minutes worth of reading, and it just keeps you up to date every day. You get it first thing in the morning, and you're good to go for the rest of the week.
Sounds like a great day to be great. To me, you guys already know what I'm bringing out to the table. Dwayne, did the McFarland family get a Halloween family costume outfit going?
Oh, yeah. They've already got it all picked out. Zoe's been trying to add more stuff to it, and Amanda put the foot down today. She's like, we spent enough on the costume. We're not doing anything else. So I'm going to work really hard to try to be done tomorrow night before trick-or-treating occurs so I can go witness it.
Fantastic stuff. Well, have a great time with that, my friend, and send Zoe, just be like, good job by me. Probably don't say that. It'd be kind of weird.
Yeah, that weird guy you've seen one time, Zoe, that I introduced you to tell you hi.
I think it was like her birthday. Dwayne's like, say happy birthday, Zoe. I'm like, hey, happy birthday. That's it. It
was awesome.
Yeah, I'm a pretty awkward guy if I'm not talking about fantasy football for 2.5 hours. But luckily, Dwayne, that does happen to be my usual way of living. So with all that said, for Dwayne, I'm Ian. Thanks as always for tuning in, everybody. And until next time, take care.